No, I don't see them on.
I'm cannot. I just texted Max. To see, if anyone, I think it would be Paul that would,
Yeah, but I don't see anybody.
we'll give it one more minute. Fine, since we have, we might as well start. Are you ready to record, Janine? Well.
Yeah.
Okay, hello, everybody. Greetings and welcome to the Waterfront Park and Environment Committee of Manhattan Community Board 4 for December. MCB4 has a hybrid policy that can be found on our website. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability and or extraordinary circumstance. Excused members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. This meeting is being streamed live on our YouTube channel and a transcript is being recorded. And also it will live almost forever if you want to go back and see a recording of it. If not forever. But we have a pretty, it's not a long agenda, but we have two fairly meaty topics. First, I think we're still waiting, right, on someone on Parks, Janine?
Yeah, let me see now. Someone else joined.
Okay.
Yeah, no one's on.
Okay, because usually we get our Parks update at the top of the meeting. But if they're not here, we have our number 2 agenda item is the land use application for the Western Rail Yards modification. And then third is EDC, which is here too. To present on the Manhattan cruise ship terminal, well, their master plan, but shore power, and then I guess their master plan. But I just wanted to, before I hand it over to Marty, who will pretty much conduct the meeting. Our first item, or really our second item, which is the land use application, was heard last night at Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use, where we talked about, though this has to do with the casino, this is really just the modification of the zoning and the modification of what they want to change from the original Western Rail Yards plan to now, to kind of make way for that application for a possible casino. I won't go into all the details, but there were a lot of people from the public who talked, there were a lot of stakeholders who talked. And the reason why Related is nice enough to come here and talk to WPE, and they also did so for the Transportation Committee, is because two major components, the transportation and the open space, is such a big chunk of what this application entails, that they would come and kind of describe what they want to do, and we can pontificate. And after we do, we're not necessarily going to have a vote on it, but we are going to share whatever our ideas and whatever our concerns and comments are with land use. And I think Paul is here. Oh, there he is. Paul Devlin is here, co-chair of land use. So just so everyone knows, last night, Hell's Kitchen Land Use decided that there was a formal vote on this, and they decided to vote in denial of the application. It will go to full board though, but that's just what the committee did vote on. They are going to write a letter and they are going to obviously put it in the Dropbox, which what we will contribute to. Now that doesn't mean anything. We can vote however we want at full board, and we can contribute still however we want to with the open space and the environmental portions. But I just wanted to give everyone an update on what happened last night, and they're going to go forward on that vote and write their letter accordingly. I say they, but I'm part of that committee too, so our letter accordingly. So with that, and no one from Parks, Janine?
No, let's just go forward. There's
No one that I can see.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm gonna, sorry? Yeah, sure, hold on one second. I'm gonna hand it over to Marty, but, Janine, I think related, do you have the related presentation?
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Okay, while you're pulling it up, I'm just gonna hand over the floor real quick to Paul, because he can probably give a little more context on the application process of it.
Thanks. Just a little bit of clarification, because there is a zoning text amendment that's before land use, but there's also a draft EIS, which is part of the secret review process. And a lot of, there are, I think, 6 or 7 chapters of that draft EIS that really would be best to have input from this committee, because it is stormwater treatment, open space issues, all of the other factors. So that's kind of where this committee can really have a say on like what direction we move with those commentary on that section of that.
But our committee has not, has anybody looked at that EIS other than the two of us?
Well, they're gonna have their presentation now.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, so there's stuff to say about the land use, but let them do the presentation.
Yeah, let them do the presentation, and then, we can, so, go on.
Okay,
You wanna
great.
go?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll stand over here if that's all right. Thanks for having us. I'm Andy Rosen. I lead Hudson Yards for Related. Joined here by a few folks from our team. We have Chris Gordon from Wynn, Kim Van Holsbeek, who'll do the bulk of the discussion here from SOM, and then Phil Dugdale from Suzaki, our landscape architect, and Townsend's also here from our design team. So I won't spend too long talking about this because I know a lot of you have seen this already or heard a lot about this project, but I do want to give a quick overview of what our plans look like, and then we'll get into more of the technical aspects of the park that we're proposing, as well as the space and how that interacts with some of the other park spaces and the waterfront and all those kinds of things that I know this committee is focused on. So this is an image of the project looking from the Hudson River to the east. We've got a hotel and resort tower on the north side near the Javits Center, a residential building on the south tower, 1,500 apartments, including over 300 affordable apartments. Behind that is an office building, 2 million square feet. And in the center is a 5.6 acre park, as big as Bryant Park, a really significant addition to the park space in this community. So we're really excited about that, and we can get into more detail. So maybe we can click to the next slide.
Before you go on, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna make one clarification. You guys are looking at that, that's a different presentation. I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. This is the Highline. They're not gonna be able, this is the Highlines presentation. That was last night, and we'll go over that after they present. Sorry.
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem, that's fine. So on the left side, you see what this property looked like in 2012. Yeah, I've been working on this project since even before then. You know, obviously, there's been a large transformation from 10th Avenue to 11th Avenue so far. We built millions of square feet, major office buildings, retail center, public plaza, you've all seen it and live it every day. It's really, you know, connected West Chelsea to Hell's Kitchen in a way that wasn't possible before with the rail track in between. This is the Western Yard space, and you know what we're looking to do there is take that rail yard and also create a vibrant opportunity for both economics and for the neighborhood to really connect to the river. So I think that's a really important aspect of the plan that was part of, you know, what city planning always envisioned here was connecting the existing park spaces out to the river. So that's something that's part of. And the other thing that I want to emphasize as part of this is, you know, as this neighborhood has grown, we are now a huge part of this neighborhood as a neighbor, right? So we care very much about, you know, what gets developed next to us. And that's part of the reason that as we look to develop the Western Yard, we want to ensure that the design of the buildings, the design of the park, the connectivity, the partnership, the folks that we bring in, including, you know, our resort partner and Wynn, are really of the same quality and at a high level of execution that we've done in the Eastern Yards to make sure that, you know, our tenants, our office tenants, our residential tenants, and our investment here, you know, is maximized, right? And everybody feels like this is an augmentation of what's already been delivered in the neighborhood. So that's important for us. We'll go to the next slide, please. A little more detail on the plan. You see the Javits Center in the foreground. I spoke about the resort. There'll be 5,000 permanent careers in that resort, union jobs in the resort on a permanent basis. It's really a large number of jobs, so it's something to keep in mind. But there are also 35,000 construction jobs that come along with this. A huge project in that sense. I mentioned the 1,500 affordable, 1,500 apartments, and the park and the office building. So I think we can flip to the next. Or keep this short for everyone. We get a lot of questions about a comparison to, what's already zoned on the site and what's proposed, right? So the first thing is that we're not proposing any change to the total square footage on the site. It's 10 FAR. We've been to keep that 5.7 million zoning square feet in both scenarios here. In almost all these cases, you'll see either the same or better, for the community. All the community spaces, the affordable housing commitment, the daycare, the community facility, the school, all those things are remain in the plan as they were. The park is actually a little bit bigger. It's 5.6 acres instead of 5.45 acres if we measured it from one to the next. And in terms of the density, right, it's, there was a zoning allowance for up to 80% commercial or residential in the plan that we had. Now, the building footprints from the plan in 2009 were restrictive. So they were smaller floor plates than we're proposing now. And what we're proposing is to take what was 6 building sites and turn it into 3 building sites. What that does is open up the park space in the center to allow that connection from what's in the eastern yard, that plaza, and the Belle Episode Park, all the way out to the High Line and then to the Hudson River. We have some excellent connection points to the High Line that we really think are gonna help people to, connect and make that an important part of the journey from east to west, wherever folks want to go. So I think that's all important, and then we can flip to the next page. We have reduced the parking from what was previously approved at 1,600 spaces.
I'm sorry, we're looking at, that was 2009 on the
Flip back.
left.
Hey, Janine, can you go back one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the left side is the 2009 iteration of the zoning. The right side is the current proposal.
Thank you.
And just to be clear on the proposal and the application, as Paul said, we are undergoing this to adjust the building footprints. There's this totally separate process for a gaming license, and that whole application would only be due probably next June, and there's a separate process to evaluate that. So this is really about the height and the setbacks for these different building sites and how that open space is set up, right? We can go to the next page. Some images of the park space. This is the lawn and stuff. Very community focused public space. Next. Okay, so here's where I'll turn it over to Kim from SOM, but I'm here for questions as we go through this. He's got a few more thoughts for you.
Why don't we wait?
Why don't you let Kim go through what he wants to say here, but I'm happy to answer at any point. Thank you.
Great. Great to be here and walk you through the revised master plan proposal. When we started this master plan and worked with a larger team, we really looked at the start of that process to some of the main or the main driver, the city planning's memo from 2009, what the goal was for the public space. That was really creating a continuation of the public spaces of Hudson Boulevard Parks, Eastern Yards, connecting that over 11th and down to the 12th Avenue to Hudson River Park. So that was a really key driver, creating space that is accessible and public to the larger neighborhoods of Hudson Yards, Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea. Really enhanced pedestrian activity, seamless connectivity between all the different spaces. But the key thing that we did when we started looking at this master plan was really seeing how, in the context of the 50-year evolution of the space, the next, how we can look at this master plan in a way that creates a new type of public open space. Next, please. That kind of builds those drivers of connectivity in space. It also creates something different. The whole neighborhood has changed since 2009. The High Line is highly successful. The Eastern Yard, particularly Urban Plaza Art, and to the north we have a series of mid-block parks with playgrounds, community spaces, etc. So we really looked at the Western Yard and see how can we build a new place that is additive in a kind of a differentiator way. So building on the notion of really creating connectivity, the big distinguish from the public open space from back 2009 to this one is previously the public space was kind of divided in a series of parts between the buildings. And we kind of similar to what exists on the Northern Boulevard, Hudson Boulevard. And we thought this great public space, creating a visible connectivity from the center of the space and creating a seamless pedestrian-only public space and park from 11th Avenue to the Highland and 12th and seamlessly coming down, creating not only street connections to Hudson River Park that exist and have been developed, but also a seamless public open space through the Western Yards down to 12th Avenue. And the space. The second part we did is look at 33rd Street and repositioning that along as part of the public realm. And really create a connected public space, not only to the west and to the south, but also allowing that to connect to the north, back to the city first. Next. And so, sorry, as you see how we connect back to Hudson River Park, because the question that came up after a couple of the meetings, we have 30th Street on the south. This is where Hudson Green comes down, speaks on the island. We'll walk through that in a bit. And there's an existing crosswalk along 30th Street. We are positioning 33rd Street with the ability to go down for pedestrians to go back north and tie into an existing crosswalk on 34th Street, again, tying back to the existing sidewalk city fabric. Next. As I mentioned, a singular public open space of 5.6 acres, bigger than Bryant Park, where all the roads that previously were allowed, 31st Street and 42nd Street, which were in the zoning text are described as private streets, are excluded and all the vehicles moved out of the space and create a seamless, singular pedestrian-oriented public space, open to the public, connected on all sides to the streets at 33rd Street, at 30th Street, and 12th Avenue and 11th Avenue. Interspersed through there a series of variety of spaces from lawns, eastern lawn, western lawn. We create views back to the river, which is one of the key elements of the city planning. The playground, active recreation was added to it, and the notion of being more hardscape along 11th Avenue, tying to the city, but quickly going into a counterpoint and a very landscape-oriented public park. Next. The park itself is anchored by really using local landscape features, coastal species, and really creating a differentiator in the public open space and the types of landscape we're going to see here. Next. And here's some visuals of the current and the proposed commission. So here we're standing on 11th Avenue looking northwest. We're basically at the Eastern Plaza at the higher point, looking north, the Javits there and the Western Rail Yards open. Next. And a similar view again here, Eastern Yards Plaza elevated, and you can see how that public space creates a very broad public open space that allows a vista all the way back to the Hudson River, where the landscape and the park really can come down and announce itself on 11th Avenue and create an inviting, welcoming face of that park on the main public street of 11th Avenue, and really helps to redefine what 11th Avenue can be with this proposal. Next. Here we're inside, normally in the middle, we're looking eastbound, so we're looking to the Eastern Yards Plaza. We also see the resort podium on the side. You'll see it has a lot of ins and outs and activity, a lot of retail activity and permeability at the south. And the recesses are also embedded in the zoning application. But while it's a very large podium, the intent is and the commitment is in the zoning text to create a lot of relief and scaling and permeability and activity. As part of the zoning proposal, key segues and circulations through the site. from 11th Avenue, primary, secondary to the destination of the window space, but also circulations through the sides down to the lower zone at the 30th Street and 12th Avenue, as well as the new connection north by pulling the building back from the previous proposal and allowing it to connect to a newly realigned 33rd Street. Next. Within that, there's a series of amenities that are embedded as part of the zoning proposal, from the 1 acre lawn, here a western lawn with the big vistas to the river, kind of in the spirit of the original intent, but also an eastern lawn more insular and protected to the inside of the larger park. To the south, between the residential tower and the office tower, the playground, 10,000 square feet minimum, located west of the office tower, where potentially the public school will be located, and connectivity from the school to the playground would be possible. And then on the lower Hudson Green, that is at the 30th Street level and 12th Avenue, the opportunity for active recreation at that location. In addition to these spaces, also there is a series of pads, benches, trees, etc., that are committed in excess of the previously committed benches and trees that were part of the previous zone. So here, that view that you saw earlier, we're standing on the western lawn with that broad vista, the ability of really creating a flexible, permeable space for casual playing soccer, frisbee, reading a book, or other events that can be programmed there by the community. Next. Now moving down on the south side, 30th Street, we're looking eastbound, existing High Line, obviously it's heavy construction with the gateway tunnel process undergoing. The next picture will show you the transformation, very much in the spirit of the last or the current 2009 zoning, really adopting pretty much all of the previous guidelines. So we really broadened sidewalk as a result of the position of the High Line, landscaping, and then on the left side here, you see a corner of that lower green with landscape, with benches and active recreation of the location of the image. Next. In 30th Street, looking westbound, the Hudson River in construction. Next. And that dramatic transformation, very broad sidewalk along very easy pedestrian connectivity from the Midtown along 30th Street, all the way down to Hudson Yards, to Hudson River Park, the High Line on the right side, and you see glimpse there of the residential tower. Below the High Line, same criteria as previously. The buildings can go all the way to the north side of the column, 5 feet back, with programs for entries for school, for daycare, for retail, as well as the residential entry further on the west side. Next. Then moving to the north side of the Western River, 30th Street is being repositioned in a street that turns around on the west side and stays level with 11th Avenue, where it then has connectivity with the Hudson Green that allows us to then north connect to the High Line as well as to 12th Avenue, which we'll go in more detail in a second. Next. What we're doing is really that currently 33rd Street goes down from the elevation 11th Avenue down to 12th Avenue. It's mostly permanently closed off police parking. This wall here is basically dividing the street, and right behind is along our railroad trains. So in the current proposal, this would be always a blank wall. But if you put a hole in here, you can see it along our railroad train. Our proposal is to realign 33rd Street at that upper level. So it's aligned with the platform. It allows us to create active street wall both on the south side as well as marshalling yards. Next. And really transform 33rd Street as a city street that has a turnaround at the end. That partially will go in our site as an easement to come back. It allows us to connect to Hudson Green and really allows seamless connection between that new park and contiguous flow to the north and the south. And you see here a stair and elevator that allows for vertical connectivity between 33rd Street and the 12th Avenue level, as well as connecting to the Highland. Next. This is that same section with the existing slope. We're realigning 33rd Street to maintain the elevation of 11th Avenue, stair, elevator, and then this will be repositioned with earth-filled ground for DOT's requirements, and have a small piece of remaining 33rd Street access from 12th Avenue that allows for marshalling arcs access for service, as well as Long Island Railroad's service access to the south. Next. Here we're standing on the west side, the roundabout, 33rd Street and the city streets repositioned at that elevation on 11th Avenue, allowing now to transform the south side into a very active permeable storefront streetscape that is safe to walk along, and obviously the same opportunity on the north side when the marshalling yards will be developed. Next. Tied to the vertical connection, there's two vertical connections between the upper 33rd Street and 12th Avenue, and the upper Hudson and the lower Hudson Green. Both those vertical connections have a stair and elevator, and it's also the point where we are locating the connection to the Highland. So there's very easy access between the different public open spaces. The Highline is obviously managed and controlled by the Highline, but it's on separate hours, and so the gate will be outside. The stair and the elevator will be part of the Hudson Green, so that connectivity between the lower and upper is independent from the operation hours. Next. So zooming into that northern vertical connection, the roundabout, the Hudson Green that travels north. We have a stair, an elevator that is outside of the property in the sidewalk, allowing access to the High Line. Here is the section, so an elevator that has a stop at 33rd Street, a stop ability that's slightly lower High Line connection, and then a stair connection allowing access and elevator connection down to 12th Avenue. We've also worked on the service access to Long Island Railroad, and a potential service access to the marshalling yards will remain possible. On the southwest corner of the site, again, Hudson Green is supposed to be on that higher elevation on 11th Avenue. That corner on the southwest on 30th Street and 12th is at a much lower elevation. Again, sort of insulation pads at the base of the residential tower that will have the elevator and stair, where we can go down to slip underneath the High Line and connect to that lower Hudson Green with active recreation, with greenery, with benches and trees. And again, on that upper level is where we have the connection to the High Line. How the spacing kind of works in the same cadence that the High Line has, the stair and elevator along the whole section. Next. Here a view, we're standing not only on 12th Avenue and 30th Street, looking diagonally, see the elevator here in the base of the residential tower. You see the stair that bring you up just behind High Line, so again, bypassing the High Line, the High Line is close. You see some of the amenities, dog park, some of the active recreation on the left side there, landscape, benches. Next. And then here we're standing at that same location, but on the High Line, the elevator that comes up, the stair that is coming up here, seamlessly connecting to the pathways and circulation of the upper Hudson, but also coming out right where the High Line connects to that spot park, and really creating seamless connectivity between all these different elements for ease of navigation and wayfinding. Next. And so then how that park kind of brings itself as a contiguous green presence on behind and in front of the High Line on the lower portion on Hudson Green. And then we wanted to go through a couple items as we worked In the beginning phase of this project, we did the highline and a couple meetings, and we had some modifications on based on feedback that were critical to them. As you want to walk through those specific adjustments we made through them, so that we ultimately find that we're very successful both development and public ground for that. Next. So there was 4 modifications, one on the side of the tower, playground, the base of the office tower, and the base of the west side of the resort podium. All in spirit of trying to create a dialogue that is better than what we had originally proposed and enhance the experience from what they saw, and actually in a lot of ways enhanced it beyond what the 2009 framework really was establishing. Next. So the first one was we had the building positions a little bit more to the south to increase the north-south dimension in the central space. The Highline pointed out it was very critical to maintain the view corridor as one walks on the Highline. They're partially covered, so we pushed the building north. There's a lot of infrastructure to the base, but ultimately we're able to kind of commit to that. The S1 navigates westbound and then north. We really have that vista from on the Highline to the Hudson River. Next. We're maintaining the same criteria as before, how much coverage over the Highline, how much support structure can be on the west side of the Highline, and in this case, actually less than the allowance. Next. So here you see we're kind of coming in the bend looking southeast. But we're maintaining all the other criteria of minimum height clearances, level 50 feet above the bed of the Highline, and staying away 5 feet from any structural building. Next. And you can see it really opens up to the west side, the full length just like before, because also there's no buildings. And again, notions of that lower Hudson green at the bottom of it. Next. The second adjustment was actually quite significant. Originally, since the decades, there was a big electrical substation that supported Long Island Railroad on the south side, sitting on 30th Street between the office and the residential. Our residential proposal maintained that there because it fully approved by Long Island Railroad, and that was a big lift. Also, that created somewhat of a wall condition with some exhaust and air intakes that we had originally set back a certain distance. The Highline asked us to really look at that and see if we can improve that. We ultimately moved this whole building with all its infrastructure in the podium on the north side, which is quite a lot of area and bulk that was added there. But the benefit was that it really allowed us to bring the Hudson Green down to not only the same elevation, so as one walks on the Highline, but also as one in the park. We really created a dialogue between the two spaces and kind of an announcement. Next. And so here you can see that picture standing on the Highline here. You see the hint of the corner of the office building, the residential, and bringing this down again. Imagine that previously there was about 10 foot louver wall that would have been beautiful and designed beautifully, but definitely obstructed insight into the park and the dialogue between the playground and the Highline journey. Next. The second and the third item is really an adjustment of the footprint and the relationship with the footprint of the office tower with the school in its space. The original zoning allowed for a much broader footprint, here in blue, that was 120 feet longer. And the only criteria that was to that footprint was 5 feet distance, like it all across the highway. We actually shrunk the footprint to again create a less broad relationship of this building at the pedestrian scale, which was the voice of really critical, was first 100 feet. We brought that back 120 feet. We then also reduced the east and the west location of those walls by additionally setting that back. And ultimately reducing that amount another 30 feet. That's one really walks along that. And then the third item is actually set back the majority of the facade at the lower 35 feet, an additional 12 feet. Next. So here, a picture, again, reducing the overall width, podium, it's a little bit taller because we didn't have to include the school. And so this is the school volume, elected to go in there. We then reset 15 feet for that first 35 feet. Again, reducing that, but then also committing to 80% transparency. So really creating an active dialogue again between the program of the base of that building and the highlight permeability in space. Next. And then in addition, again, typical the highline, as was the zoning in 2009, you can build up to straight on that wall 5 feet apart. We added an additional 10 feet, total of 15, except for the structural columns that were able to go at that 5 foot line. So that together with the transparency really enhanced the dialogue and the kind of bold perception as you walk down in that pedestrian realm space. Next. And then last on the west side of the northern development, we originally had a singular wall. There was a concern to try to open up the view. So we pulled this portion of the building back. So again, that opened up faster, that broadened the space. As I mentioned previously, you could build up to 5 feet for the first 100 feet. So there was no connectivity to the north, and the building could have set right at the high line 5 feet away. We maintained that connectivity to the north, and it worked off the center scale and volume along the high line of that region. Next. And in addition to that, there was a commitment, which is also embedded in the zoning proposal, to have a double height, high transparent corner, again, beside the setback, also opening the view through the building, very much like you see here in the west. As you stand on the corner of 33rd Street, you really see the central plaza because of its transparency. And so those are enhancements, we did tweaks and commitments that are all embedded in the proposal. Next. Shadows, we want to touch upon that. I think we're going to question that was brought up a couple times. Again, for the DEIS, just as a background, where you see shadow increments, again, the baseline for DEIS eliminated these 3 buildings for technical reasons. So this is the massing, that's the basis of an analysis. Next. So obviously it's not the full build out, because those 3 buildings will come in play. And so that gives a little bit of a warped perception. The other point that we want to point out is that the DIS assumes the maximum zoning envelope box, which is typically done. Now, the zoning envelope is quite conservatively large. While this is the site where the building can sit in, and again, maintaining that highline view corridor, the maximum footprint in that 44,000 site is 20,000. So the shadow analysis in the EDIS is assuming this is a square building, which it will never be, because the footprints can only be half. So again, highly conservative, again, worst case scenario. And so looking at the EIS and some of those notes, in the comparable 2009, 3 buildings were eliminated. And in the proposed analysis, this building was highly inflated from what actually can be built. And so that worked some of the assessment, pointed out. So next slide, what we saw yesterday as a statement that we actually want to put in front of you as a comparable is that in the shadow analysis between the proposed illustrative, the design proposal of 2009 and the design proposal of 2024, and you kind of look at the 2 pictures over the 3 pages of this in the summer, in the spring, and the winter. The nominal light and shadow, when you scan for this, again, you have this, you can look at it. It's nominally the same. Yes, the shadow is slightly different, different times of the day, but the amount of shadow zones and light zone is the same. And I would even say sometimes, like certain times, there's more white here than here. This part that's kind of embedded between 2 towers actually quite a lot. It doesn't have some, yeah, there's pros and cons of each scheme. We just want to make clear our assessment that the shadow and light axis is very similar. in all seasons. Summer. Next. Fall. So if it's the 2 hours that was stated yesterday, which we verify, it's 2 hours for both scenarios. We don't think that the daylight access is any difference in both scenarios. While we think the visual connection between eastern yards to the Hudson is dramatically improved by eliminating the buildings in the center and eliminating the streets and the ability to do turnarounds in the public open space that is currently allowed in the zoning regs. And technically would reduce the amount of landscape and plaza area from 5.6 acre. It's really stated. Next.
Is it okay if I just ask a question? I'm just a little confused. What is shadow? The blue is the
So the
shadow?
blue is shadow and the white is sun.
And when that, so the,
Well, the white is also building,
That's correct. Sorry.
yeah.
and the big white space right there, the, like on the far left, you have the building footprints,
This one.
the tower. And you see there's the square, which is that park or is that?
No, this is the.
That's a building.
Happy to revise it to color the buildings. if that's
Yeah,
helpful.
it's,
We can do that.
I mean,
It's easier to read. And then I want to touch upon a couple of the sidewalk infrastructures on the environment, stormwater. So all the stormwater will be collected on the platform. Again, 2/3 of the site sits over rain tracks. All of that will be captured on site, discharged in storm sewers, and potentially included in the existing line of railroad private storm sewer that is part of the Western Railroads. Also, because management practice will be used to reduce the planetary stormwater runoff, as we do on all these type of class A developments, with start developments. Sewer and wastewater, we amended the drainage plan to allow for, as part of the 33rd Street realignment. As you can see, we're kind of rebuilding that, making solid ground with majority on the DOT press, and with that, all the utilities will be in positions, including drainage. Sanitary storm sewer also as part of that, plus 33rd Street, full of connections, resiliency, the majority building sits on platforms well above, the stormwater. So the building, the park and the building on the north side development is well above the floodplain elevations. MTA for the Long Island Railroad is going to build their own flood wall, on the west side, and then tying that to make their space. So that's an independent project by them. On the south side, the residential tower, the office tower have entrances that are below the flood line. But there is flood mitigations at those entrances to mitigate those, and maintain egress, up to a higher egress level, through the park, because they have both 33rd Street access as well as park access. Renewable resources, obviously the building will meet all the local law 97 requirements. And we'll have charging capability not just for cars, but for a lot broader range of transit modes, bicycle, e-mobiles, supports, and electrical vehicle chargers for the development themselves. Next. And ending up with what we think is a great different addition of public space to a great collection of public spaces that have grown over the last 15 years. From the Highland to the Eastern Rail Yards, to the Hudson Boulevard series of parks and the Hudson River Park along the river, really creating a diversity of types of public spaces that are really seamlessly connected and designated for public pedestrian activation. Thank you.
Are you good related?
So good, yeah, that's, any questions we're here to answer. Simple water.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, let's go around and you all have questions. Do it systematically. Oh, Katie was first. Katie was first.
Sure.
It's okay.
I was gonna go around.
Go ahead.
We could go around. This image, it makes it look like the podium is 3 stories tall. Are those actually 3 floors we're looking at?
So these are 3 floors. The landscape goes up a little bit. The first setback, I know there's a statement of 200 feet volume. There is actually 100 feet volume, which is the same as the current northeast floating guideline. Then there's a mandatory setback as in the current zoning of 10 or 15 feet. depending on the street, one of the things is 15 feet across the board. And then there's an allowance for a larger footprint above the podium that has bigger footprint than the standard tower, but it really has your standard first setback, just like on all the avenues where you have 90 or 120, 150 setback and then the building.
Do you have a view that shows that?
Uh,
Go to one of the park renderings.
Yeah.
Janine, I'm sorry, can you
Can I
please
see
put
the
back up
presentation?
the presentation?
I think if you go towards the beginning, the view where we're looking westbound.
You'll also see in the street level on 11th. It comes at 11th Avenue, so there's another floor on that street. Because the park builds up.
Janine, can you hear me? Janine?
David, what else do you have while he's waiting?
Yeah, so it's a good.
You know, that, you showed how you'd be able to sort of see through that rounded glazed corner of the podium over to the west side. You talked about that.
Yes.
Kind of like you can see through the lobbies of these buildings here at Hudson West. What's behind that? What would you see inside?
So that corner is mandatory retail. But there's an opposite corner on 11th Avenue that city planning was very focused on. I don't know if you guys all realize that the city of Yes has changed the street activation framework of transparency and retail requirements, and there's across the city has thrown out whatever existed before. So the 2009 guidelines don't exist anymore. Are doing the city of Yes, and so now there's a much more flexible framework. And so when you met with city planning and highlighting those two corners on the northern developments were really key for city planning to have activation to the park. And so those are those mandatory dimensions of retail activity. On the west side is also mandatory to be double height and 90% or 80% transparency, similar to what you have here on the office towers. So you have that space to beyond the building, setting back, also have a view through that.
Right, but it could be divided in the interior.
It could be divided, but there's a mandatory of transparency
Meaning glass.
glass.
Thank you.
And we can go back to that picture too.
Did you say it was 3 stories or not?
We come back, it's,
No,
the volume is 4 stories program.
You asked about 3. And
And then there's a mandatory
three.
setback
So
of
up to-
15 feet.
Up to the top of the first setback was about 100 feet, did you say?
I think the illustrative drawing is about 115 feet. I think the zoning envelope, again, because we haven't lost all of this, you know, all the resiliency. There's a little buffer that we call it the sweater, which is pretty standard to have a little bit extra flexibility for height. So you don't have to come back and something like, oh, structure is bigger, we need an extra 5 feet. And so the zoning sweater is a little bit bigger. You see that in all the buildings. So that's pretty standard practice when you do the work.
Explain what's on the roof, Kim. When it's down
So after the setback, there is a series on the resort scenario, there's a series of program models of a ballroom, conferencing center, but they're all mandatory setback, minimum of 15, very typical, like standard street walls, one.
And the reason he was mentioning, you said you saw 3 stories from the park, from that view it is because the park actually slopes up a bit. So you're sort of halfway between a level when you start at grade and 11th. So it's 4 from 11th, but it's 3 from the middle of the park, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
The reason of that is there is infrastructural.
And just to put it in a little bit of perspective, it's hard to see on these drawings. It is a mammoth, that base, that podium is more than a city block. I mean, it is humongous. I mean, it's more than humongous. It's,
You know, it's like the length by width.
What?
The length is 7 feet,
Check,
so it's
enormous,
basically
yeah.
Farley. Like east west is the length of Farley,
And then,
or like the Morgan post office.
and north south?
North south, it's 300, so it's for bigger north south. There was one of the things. on the
So
west side.
it's like the footprint of London Terrace and a half. About 200 by, that's about right. 800.
the drawings.
I heard 700 by 300. Right, 200 versus 300, that's where I get the and a half.
Was that?
You're next.
So, first of all, thank you. Great presentation. Love what you envisioning for what is currently a terrible eyesore. You mentioned the city of Yes.
Yes.
And I noticed in your presentation that you're still planning 720 and change parking spaces. And I was under the impression that city of Yes wanted to greatly reduce or eliminate parking spaces altogether, so that more housing, preferably affordable housing, can be built. What can you address that?
There's two questions. The city of Yes allows you not to have to build parking. Nothing to do with this project. It took that burden for some development that said, hey, we're next to a subway station. Previously was mandatory, people want to use it. But that's what the city has implemented, especially around the centric. With me, cannot. On our side,
Yeah, I mean, we started, the plan, it was at 1,600 spaces when we started this 15 years ago. And this is 725, so it's greatly reduced from, what was envisioned back then.
Right. Next question, the shadow analysis that you made was actually perhaps a lot confusing, because I thought the white portions was the light, until it was pointed out that that's actually a building, or buildings. So, I was, it would be nice if you could differentiate between building and light. Because that to me, it totally ruined that part of the presentation for me. So, and the last thing is, you made no mention about the motivation for this project, I understand, is the possibility of a casino. But that's a different application process. And what happens if that fails? What if you don't get the casino there? Does all of this go away? Can you address that?
Sure. So firstly, I think very importantly, as we look at the existing plan, this has been a struggle we've had for a long time. The cost of that platform over the train tracks has gone up dramatically over the last 15 years, right? So it's getting more and more expensive to figure out how to pay for that infrastructure. And the logistics of building that over the rail tracks is really such that you kind of have to build it all at once. We had looked at a lot of different ways to build it in pieces, right, which would be more conducive to, one by one buildings. You build a building, you get money to pay for the building and the infrastructure that's associated with it. We have not been able to figure out how to do that, based on the cost and the market and where everything is right now. And, the reality is that the luxury condos that we hoped were gonna pay for the platform, back 15 years ago, the model doesn't work anymore from a financial perspective. So we had to look at something different, looking at a large anchor tenant, effectively, the resort, as one option to pay for that infrastructure. And so, that's what this plan, is keyed around, is that those lessons about the costs and the physical infrastructure. There are a bunch of other technical things associated with the exhaust and the structure that went into the decision to expand the podium footprint and things like that, because it spreads some of the loads out and allows for fewer columns into train tracks that are, otherwise difficult for Long Island Rail to inspect trains. So there's a lot of detail that went into that, but that's fundamentally, why we made the adjustments that we're proposing from an infrastructure perspective. And then in the event that the gaming license is not awarded to this site, we have, as part of this project, contemplated that alternative. It would be a commercial tower on the north side of the site. As well as we have an office, hotel, and residential, 3 different towers on that podium. So it's the same size podium, but with 3 different towers on top. And that's what we've, evaluated in the environmental statement.
So as far as you know right now, it's not anchored on or dependent on the gaming license.
Well, this zoning application is independent of that. It is a precursor to that. So we need this to get done in order to move forward with the gaming application, which will be due in June of next year. And then there's a whole state process that evaluates that. So we're kind of breaking it into 2 pieces. We need to get the city ULURP process done for the zoning to move the pieces around on the site first.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Can I just, we're gonna go to committee first, then we're.
No questions? Yeah, it's a good question. I'm gonna go through the committee.
So, just to,
And then you.
just from clarification and some crossover from land use. Why the original plan is for a bunch of housing, thousands and thousands of unit housing, from affordable to luxury and everything. They're coming here now is because they want a casino. You know, they need money for this platform, this is the money generator, so what they have to do, forget the application for casino. And Paul, you can correct me, if this is very pedestrian, yeah, you will, I know, is they need to change that zoning. They need to change it to commercial now. And I think the struggle at land use was, you are eliminating thousands and thousands of units of housing. So that's why I want to address when you asked about the parking. There's really not much residential anymore. It's gonna be all commercial, but you bring up a very good point, which is another point that land use has also discussed. What happens if you don't get the casino? Now we're screwed, you know, now we lost housing and it's all commercial. So it was very.
But we're not losing any affordable housing.
No,
So I just want to make that clear,
Yeah.
we're losing high-end condo, but they're sticking to the original plan of the affordable housing. Now.
right, but it's high-end condo, because they make it high-end condo, they can be anything.
They can do whatever they want in the condo,
Right.
and now they just said they're gonna keep the platform no matter what. And then put 3 different buildings or this building. So
If
it
they get the
doesn't
commercial
affect,
license.
right, and it doesn't affect the affordable park or anything else.
The affordable housing stays, we have built in total at Hudson Yards, between the onsite and the projects that were developed as a result of this and the preservation work that we've done. 1,100 affordable housing units in this neighborhood, and you know, many of them on site already that we've built in the eastern yards. 324 left in that commitment that we made. And we intend to live up to that. The programs have changed, the tax incentives and the other things have changed, but we're sticking to that commitment to build that affordable
Can I
housing.
clarify one casino point too? I'm Chris Wood from Wynn Resorts, who's posted a casino. It is a casino, that's certainly fair, but 5% of the building is casino. 95% of the resort is something else, hotels, conference space, meeting space, commercial space, so. We're fine if people call it a casino, we tend to call it a resort because only 5% of it is actually casino. And if you look across all the western yard, it's like 3%. So it's not 1 million square feet of gaming, it's a very small piece of building.
Thank you for
But
that.
obviously an economic driver, that's important.
And Leslie, I want to clarify one thing you said, is that this site is zoned, commercial C64. That zoning will not change, this is not an application to change the zoning to commercial. It's already, the C64 zone allows residential. This is an alteration to that site plan. So the language was slightly off and I didn't.
I understand.
No, it is,
Yeah.
it's a very technical perspective.
I think we're
But the
allowed,
C64
we're allowed to
zone
build
allows
8 FAR commercial and 2 of residential. Or 2 in commercial and 8 in residential, or anywhere in between. The fall of 2000 is not conducive for doing 8 FAR in commercial. You could do 6 hotels. That can fit in that footprint, so we could do commercial at either FAR. Programmatic financially, that is not logical. So it's really a bulk of a change and a public open space reconfiguration that go hand in hand to allow for more commercial conducive footprints. Really.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. The first one, what is the current cost of building the platform?
So it's a roughly $2 billion platform now.
Okay. And as far as the open park space, now that it is a much larger uninterrupted space, because you don't have those buildings in the middle, would there ever be a time that portions of the park are closed for private ticketed events?
I mean, we intend for this to be open to the public and, you know, ticketed is not something that we've contemplated here, but, you know, we should talk about the rules and regs for what that park space is, and how it's handled. And there are a number in our existing restricted declaration, we're not intending to change any of that.
All right, and then my last question is about the stormwater and just clarifying. You said the stormwater for the platform would be held and then put into the sewer. Is that the existing city sewer system?
You guys have any comments?
So DEP
is evaluating this whole neighborhood from a drainage standpoint, given 15 years. There's a current amended drainage plan that they have for the neighborhood. They're looking at it with a fresh eye, given the amount of development. So the current systems exist of a Long Island Railroad outfall, their yard drains to the Hudson. That would remain unchanged. On 33rd Street, there's a large combined storm and sanitary sewer. What they would like to do is see that that is abandoned so that storm and sanitary are discharged separately. So we're looking with them at a dedicated storm discharge, which would go to the Hudson via a new outfall, allowing that unused storm capacity to handle sanitary, if you will. So DEP, and they also under 33rd Street at 11th Avenue is a siphon structure, which also is a mechanical element that maintains a lot of drainage that's not gravity driven, and they have to maintain that as a nuisance form. They're also trying to eliminate the necessity of that structure. So DEP, we've had several meetings with DEP about the proposed 33rd Street, which includes all those utility enhancements, you know, to bring drainage up to new standards, which handle, you know, greater amounts of rainfall in a shorter period of time, to help with all the neighborhood and kind of localized flooding conditions that they see now happening more regularly.
Great, yeah, because I think separating that as much as possible would be for the best to avoid any overflow of the sewage into the river.
And I would say the singular landscape plan that's not interrupt our roads and Lafferty, it also creates a much larger soil beds that actually connect to
Like a rain.
the layer
Yeah.
before it gets kind of pushed into the sewage system.
I have a couple of follow-up questions on that before I go to you, if I may. So I understand it, it's DEP that's building the stormwater and not part of this project on 33rd Street, but that you're building stormwater separated from sewage on 30th Street, is it? I think 30th Street, the southern part of the project. Is that correct?
Our proposal for 33rd Street, for the EIS, commits, related as, accomplishing the construction and utility enhancements to 33rd Street. So that is something we, have, described in the EIS as such. 30th Street, I can't recall off the top of my head a lot of changes there, but those are described in the EIS, and we can direct you to that chapter.
No, I've read that chapter, that's why I'm asking the questions.
I'll have to look at that for more detail.
But the big work on 33rd, we paid for.
And as I understand it, you're separating storm from sewer on 33rd with a separate storm
Yes,
outfall there and on 33rd Street.
yes.
The EIS also says that you're planning for, excuse me, I'm doing this by memory, I think it's 1.5 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. And I was curious why only that? That's the minimum required by regulation, and New York has had rainfall events that are significantly more than that over time.
I can check on that. I can't speak to that, but the engineer can certainly address that question.
Our environmental consultants are also on the Zoom, so if we want to pull them in to be able to speak, maybe that might be helpful to answer. I'm not sure they can answer this specific question, but there may be others that.
So you may not be able to answer the question, or you may be saying that you're only going to plan for 1.5 inches of rain. And my statement is that I'm concerned that that's not enough. That there are a number of occasions in which New York City has seen 2 inches of rain per hour. So, and holding tanks won't do it unless there's larger, since you've got the pipe, make the pipe large enough to take more water. That's what I'm saying.
We'll track that down.
Thank you.
Janine, can you hear us?
Now,
Yes.
Janine? Oh,
Yes.
Is there Jennifer Morris?
Yeah, and I think Patrick Blanchfield maybe also.
I'm sorry, give me 1 second. The volume is a little low.
All right, we can continue on.
Right, thank you for the presentation.
I was wondering, I have a few questions, if that's okay. The first is just maintenance of the park, who would be responsible for it?
That's our responsibility there. So, I think important relative to all the parks maintenance needs around the city, we know everybody is always angling for more money to support park maintenance. This is something where, just on the Eastern Yards, we will maintain that park.
Okay. We've had conversations about like PEP officers as a committee. I'm wondering if you gotten into like security detail and into that level of detail yet for this, for the open space.
I mean, we haven't gotten into, that planning stage yet, but, I would expect a similar, maintenance program to, and, security program to what we have in the Eastern Yard.
I think whatever sort of design comes out of this, it's super important that it works well with the High Line, so appreciate the modifications and the slides touching upon that. I'm wondering, just currently, are there still conversations with the High Line? Are you still working with them to make modifications to this? What's the current status of that?
Just to be candid, on this process, right, there are, right, we worked with them, we met with them 10 times over the course of 2023 and the early part of 24. We made these changes at their request. They said they'd go back and take a look at them. That was in May of last year. And then we didn't hear from them. We reached out numerous times trying to set up meetings. We sent them letters asking to meet, and they have ignored those completely. So we have not been able to meet with them. We would very much like to. We've been meeting with community groups all over the place, but the Highline has been one that's really, said they don't want to talk. So that's been.
I'm curious. No, I'm sorry. No, it's just for committee, sorry, right now. And then we can go to, and just to follow up during our committee
Write them
discussion.
down because we are gonna come to that.
Okay.
We're going to,
I will have a
the
chance to
High
ask
Line
that.
was there, excuse me.
Well, maybe to the conversation.
Guys, stop, we got it, everything's good. The High Line was there last night and they presented. So we, in our committee discussion, we'll discuss that and they, gave us these, their presentation, but we will, afterwards, we can go over and. more
Okay,
detail.
yeah, it would just be great to make sure that everyone's talking, they're in agreement, they support this, it works with their space as well as yours, so it's an important thing, I think, personally for me, but I think for the committee. And
We want to work.
yeah, great, that's good to hear. And then just, I think this touches upon sort of like what was talked about with the environmental stuff, but like you mentioned best management practices as far as environmental remediation. Could you flesh that out a little bit more exactly sort of what that means?
Yeah, I think Jennifer, could you add some color to that?
Janine, is Jennifer over?
I'm not seeing a Jennifer.
How about Patrick Blanchfield?
Patrick
Patrick?
Blanchfield?
No, I'm not.
But just while we're waiting. For any of the hazardous waste, you have to submit a management plan to the DEP who will review it, and then you have to follow the plan. So they would set the bar, but we'd have to follow all the codes and all the requirements that are within all the land use regulations.
When they're on a call, I'm happy to follow up with some specifics.
That'd be great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Candace.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions as well. I'll start. I read shadows, so shadows in construction I read, so and mitigation and a couple others. So I'll kind of focus my questions on there. On the shadows, I noticed there was really no anything that talked about the Javits rooftop and about the garden that they have on top of there. What were your talks with them on it? They were shadowed the whole time, besides like maybe in noon, I think.
That's actually on the third or fourth slide, which is where I wanted to go. If you look at the third or fourth slide.
Janine, can you go to the slides of the shadows? I think that's later on in the presentation.
Yeah, let me try to.
Sorry, beginning. I'm sorry.
At the beginning, that's why I said, because that's.
Oh,
On the third or the fourth slide, no, yeah, it was clear. But right at the beginning of the presentation, and it was exactly.
Yeah, if you go back to the third or fourth, yeah, keep
Yeah, okay,
going.
that, no, the one you just had,
The one you just,
The next one.
no,
that one,
okay.
okay,
Right,
thank you.
there's the Javits Center, and there are the tall buildings, so to my, I'm not an engineer, it looks like the southern sun well, they're in shadow right now, with all the sunshine, so yes, to me, that's gonna kill the Javits Center rooftop, those 12
There's
areas.
probably some artistic liberty here, because we put text here,
I'm sorry, what was that?
artistic liberty for graphic purposes, so I would.
It's not accurate.
It's not
I'm just saying from what
I know,
you
it
guys
doesn't- I
presented,
mean, I'm not gonna deny.
This
that
is
there's this picture, this area, we put white text, so we actually darkened the background a
But
little.
the first time that I became aware of that, was walking the area, in other words, I mean, I now feel alive, and I love the rooftop of the Javits Center. When I walked by, knowing what's going up there, that was oh my gosh. They put up those super talls, this uses the southern sun, that, I could be wrong, but that was my visual. And then this kind of like reinforced it. So is that what you're
yes,
thinking?
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we've analyzed the shadows and the environmental, you see what's there. I think you should compare that to, you know, a build, without this and what else will be built, you know, around the neighborhood. Hopefully that's.
It wasn't
in there.
included in your study, is
Okay.
what I was saying, it
And
wasn't
it has a
included,
recess, too.
as well as, there's another rooftop garden, I think the Baptist church, that your shadows would hit as well. So there are a lot of rooftop garden areas in this neighborhood that your shadows are gonna affect, is what.
Okay,
I'm
and
getting
I
some.
guess I would just say, we'll take a look at that, but you know, comparing it to what would otherwise be built there is something important, and then also. What could be built on the Javits Marshalling Yard site to our north, which may impact that, you know, as well, so, you know, over time. You know, obviously, as buildings get built, there are shadows, there's no way around that.
Okay, but have you spoken to the Javits Center about their rooftop, or you have not, can you maybe further include them in that discussion, I guess?
We can talk.
I mean, they use that, we went to they
I've been up
showed
there.
us to it, and, you know, they use that material, the food they get there to feed the Javits Center, so you're kind of economically hurting them with this proposal. Another one is, who would be responsible for the gates, on the,
Candace, wait a second.
Yes.
You're moving off the shadows.
yeah, no,
Because if you're ready
No.
to move off the shadows.
Yeah.
I want to go back.
Yeah, I just had another rule, so your images of the shadows only show the plan area. It doesn't show like an extended border, because obviously the shadow doesn't stop at 33rd Street. Or it continues on, so it might be helpful if you're able to expand a buffer area around that to visually show more the shadow's impact on the surrounding areas and not just the plan area.
She has the environmental impact shadows, so I think that's.
so I guess on that one with the river, that's River Park in that area, what studies have you done for the fish that live in that, or not the fish, they swim in the river, but everything that happens in that area? How is that gonna affect it? Really didn't see a lot of information environmentally of how that would be impacted. So I would like a further study on that. There was the radius, I know it only went the quarter, shadows go further than that, I would hope we, as a community board, I think we asked for half a mile, and you guys still only presented a quarter. But on certain other things on your studies, you decided to include when it was favorable to you, to include a half mile radius of something. So if you're gonna include it for something that's favorable for you, include it for it all, I would say. Also on the shadows, I guess it has to do more of the building, the construction, local law 15. How are you guys, with the windows going to follow by that? In that area of Hudson Yards, there's already a mass birds and the dead birds every morning. If you will get up there early enough, you'll see them sweeping them up. What are you guys going to do about that? I mean, there are, like I said, local law 15 does now make sure that there's certain protections for the glass that you put up. But a bird's gonna run into glass. Is there anything that you would do further besides just the basic requirements? Again, look to the Javits Center, they have a special coating that they've put on their windows. that I would like to see if you guys are gonna build that high to put that coating onto your windows.
We'll ask them,
there's-
do you have
there-
plan- what are the plans for bird friendly glass?
I mean, we haven't evaluated yet, so.
Too soon.
And technology goes also really fast, so. Will it be slow?
Yeah, well, I think it is the law, I think she's correct.
Right, there is.
Yeah, it's local law 15 of 2020.
So that obviously will,
Yeah.
apply to that.
And it's mentioned in your scope report, like your final scope report,
It's in
that
the,
say that you will have bird friendly glasses.
I guess also with the shadows, there was kind of a couple of time lapses, it didn't really, I was looking at like where the park was for the school, there was a little bit of a time lapse. I felt like they're only getting like an hour of sunlight, if I was wrong, for the school, and it's mostly in for the playground that you have, designed for it. It looked like maybe an hour 30. There was some, like I said, your timeline didn't really go hour by hour. It skipped, I think at like 11 o'clock, it skipped to 1:30. But it definitely moved the sun, so,
I mean, I think the playground specifically, we put actually in a better position than it was before.
Okay.
Before it was in the center,
Mhm.
between all the buildings, and get connected between residential, though it's kind of around, it's currently sitting on the south side between the two buildings. So in the middle of the day, you can control what's across the streets. So with the High Line and the 30th Street, we actually have close to 100 feet, like the width of an avenue. So if technically it should, I think in the solar analysis, you'll see in the middle of the day, it actually gets the most light the longest. Except for the west side of the Highlands, that gets sun from the fully.
and could you get a percentage point of like how much you think that open space is that will actually have sunlight?
You don't have a percent, I mean, the majority of the space though, is due to the north of the building, again, in the morning you might get, because we have a big avenue that's east west, so we actually get more sun in the morning than evenings pulling through. And there will be spots due in the north, and so you're not gonna get sun. I think it's, again, it's similar to the previous plan. We don't have a quantitative basis analysis at this point. But when we update the graphics, you can read the shadow studies. It's not making the borders from what was before, and some components like the playground, we strategically actually moved this to those positions by increasing the dimension between the two southern buildings to enhance some of those critical park components.
Okay. I think I'm done with shadows, if anybody wants to piggyback on shadows real quick.
Keep going.
Keep going. On shadows?
No.
Okay, I was like, I have nothing else on shadows. I guess the gates, who would be responsible? You said there was connections from the High Line to them. Who would be responsible for those gates? You guys,
So we stopped getting dialogue. I actually worked with the High Line on the High Line connector and the designer. So my understanding is that the gate is part of the High Line's control, because they actually close the High Line access independent on their hours. And maintenance is done by.
That's how it works on the eastern yard.
So it's on our assumption is on their court, because but we haven't really had a dialogue.
so Mike, it's my second question, follow up to that would be, so it's getting you're even, and then the gates right now at High Line are, very low, just the rails. And then from what you may or may not be in that process, I just want to make sure that if there is a chance for somebody just to keep walking and then off, I would like a gate height entrance, we ask for, I know Sally, we talk about parks and gates all the time, and this is a park and we need a gate around it. Is that gonna be all the way around at this point then?
Around the High Line,
Yes,
like, again, we're not intervening to the High Line, we're
but you
giving.
guys are giving us the park.
Well, so the park, our park, the Hudson Green space, we are set 5 feet away from the High Line, just like all the other spaces around. So there's a gap between the two.
Okay, so,
So it's not like, there'll be two discrete access points to the High Line, one at the
At
south.
the end of the park,
And one at.
Right.
at the end of the park.
Yeah, we'll have the same kind of, standard that the High Line and the code require to have, for that gap.
okay, I don't, I guess maybe this is something, Leslie, we need to ask the Highline to try to get that information. If there is that separation of the park.
Yeah.
Also, I appreciate you pushing it back to keep the High Line visible. I did read about vibrations and the sound and all of that. On that 15 feet of that vibration, because now you're moving closer, is that when was that study done to move it back compared to what you guys gave us?
You're talking about during construction?
Yes, the construction phase.
Okay, so yeah, the EIS incorporates all those changes that we already made, so that should be reflected in the
And then
EIS,
we-
right, yes.
Okay, and because you said you got pretty close, 5 feet, but your vibrations were 15.
Can't speak to it, so we'll have to look at that.
Okay, because it was I believe, because of the construction for the,
Obviously,
it
we have
being
to
a
do-
landmark, possibly a landmark as well as, so.
We've dealt with this in the past and we have monitors and we make sure that's all, handled appropriately, so that's. practice.
Vibrations. And then, I guess this kind of has to do, it has to do with environment. I know you guys said, it was brought up yesterday on the e-bike parking situation, and you had mentioned there's city bike right here. I am a construction worker, I'm a carpenter by trade. A lot of the guys ride their bikes in, and at related sites, they get turned down and told they cannot bring their bike inside. I remember hearing this gentleman talking about taking away the parking spots because a lot of their people come in and they were gonna have bike parking for them. I just want to have that courtesy, the same courtesy for the construction workers if this project does get built, that they will be allowed to bring their bikes onto the site. Because, you know, that is their mode of transportation. They're not taking a city bike over to lock it up. You know, they're actually bringing it onto site.
Sure, I get it.
So,
That's a good suggestion, we can do that.
okay, and then also, I guess with construction hours, it has to do with, your hours, need to be kind of changed with that. Most sites now start at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, deliveries are 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, until coffee time, and then again after lunch, and all the way till 5. That was not projected in any of your findings. I would, hope you extend those hours. And then also update your, I think the census was the 2000 census of how many workers traveled by car, by rail. Again, it's 2024. Update that, please. A lot of them do use Long Island Railroad, the buses, PATH trains. Yeah, I guess that's it, I think.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, please.
You know, I think my initial impression of this, and I'm a pretty new community board member, is that I was disappointed by this change because of the reduced number of total housing units. But what was interesting was when you said was that the affordable housing commitment that you guys made in 2009 will still be kept. So it was really the incremental, like, market rate housing that you guys
Those
reduced.
were luxury condos, you know,
Yeah.
as we discussed in previous meetings, but it's you know, that's the piece that was eliminated in terms of, you know, what you see in the 2009 plan was all luxury condos.
I was excited about the daycare. Where, is that independent of the school, or
Yes.
is that in the school? Where is the daycare in this?
It's contemplated on the 30th Street side in the configuration that we have now. We have some flexibility to move around, depends on what we end up doing with each of the buildings, but it's a separate program from the school.
Okay, and then third question is, I'm like, relating to bathrooms, I think we all are, public bathrooms, like, it's a big park, do you guys have areas, I guess, like, how many?
Currently, there is, unlike 2009, there was zero commitment. There is current commitment for a park, bathroom facility in publicly accessible, either that's a structure in the park or in the building footprint they're not located at. But that is a new connection that is part of the.
Almost everything I want has been covered.
And we'll go on to the next
No,
question.
I'm still confused a little bit. I do want to back up to the housing because I'm confused about the original plan in 2009. Actually until last night and now further discussion. I thought the 5,700 units was mostly market rate, not $10 million homes. Market rate, I can't believe that the plan was approved with nothing but $1 billion homes. I know there was a small, amount of, affordable housing, which is kind of like a holdover going into this now from other projects, so we're getting that minimal affordable housing. But in my wildest dreams, and anybody familiar with the original 2009 plan, was all that high-end condominiums, millions of dollars, or was it market rate housing? I mean, I'd like a clarification.
Yeah, I mean, we had luxury condo buildings in the center. If you look at the floor plates of the buildings in the 2009 plan, they are square for the most part, right? The square buildings are set up to be condominiums because the units have to be large, right? And that's because the depth from the core where the elevators are out to the exterior is rather big, which leads to a large unit. If you're gonna build a rental apartment building, it needs to be a bar shape or an L shape. Those are the typical building sizes and shapes that work for rental apartment buildings that would be, in part affordable. So there were some buildings that were contemplated with that, but the pieces, there were 3 or 4 buildings, the center pieces, those 3 red buildings that we took out of the shadow study were all intended to be condominiums. And if you look at the cost of the platform, even back then, right, in order to pay for that, we needed to put in, for sale units because the rental apartment buildings just would not be able to.
It's interesting, by the way, because we were doing this back then and we built Hudson Yards. I'm not sure why some business and didn't cover the platform, and my costs were not gonna go down in 15 years. I don't know why you didn't cover the platform then.
We got to pay for it, right? We didn't get money to do that,
But it
right?
is
So
probably half the cost that it is now. So, I
It
mean,
was
you knew
exactly
you were
that.
gonna build it, you knew you were gonna build these out, so.
the platform has to be designed and built with the buildings, and the design of the building is also known, right? And so in order to pay for the platform, you need to have the full design of the building, and then you need to also pay for the building, right? So all those things go with the market, and the market has changed from that to now, so it's pretty significant.
Any other committee members? Yes, please.
The big tower over the podium. That's just a hotel. I mean, it's called Waverly Resort. I'm sure it's got some other spaces, but that's mainly hotel rooms.
Yeah, I mean, Chris can speak a little more to the.
Yeah, it's got 1,500 hotel rooms and 238 units on top for residents. And they'll primarily be they'll be owned, but most of them will go back in hotel pool. So it'll be 1,738 units. But in the tower, it's all hotel type rooms. At the very base of the top floor next to the convention space, there are meeting rooms and spa and that sort of stuff, but everything up in the tower is actual occupiable rooms.
Did you say the very top would be for sale or?
Yeah, there's 238 units on top of the residents for sale.
Okay, so it is partly luxury condominium.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Brian. She spoke before you had.
That's okay, I was waiting to potentially balance it, thank you. Thanks, guys. I mean, I'm like 5 acres to 5.6 acres. I'm just gonna go real quick. We're losing 33rd Street, right?
I think you're actually gaining it.
No,
right?
it's a question. We're losing 33rd. So in my mind, right, I don't know why the turnaround can't be up top towards 10th. And that whole street should be a park. But we should consider that. The second thing is, if we are gonna lose the street, then we need to get double the amount of affordable housing. This is a city street. That's now going to a private entity. Because no matter what you guys say, it's a turnaround to get into the resort.
Also access to the side of the north, right?
That access to what?
There's a Javits.
Right,
site on
and
the
we can
north
get
side.
in on 11th, and if we didn't give you the block, then you get in, no problem.
Well, the other
So
thing-
you gotta look at it that way. So I think this should be discussed. I like their design, I think it's nice, but it should be a park, or the turnaround should be on the other corner, because we're losing a whole block. We're not gaining anything. Nothing. So I don't think that's quite fair. I really do like the layout, I like the design. So that's one thing I thought of. The service to the buildings, do we run the site, like, how's that coming in? there's a lot, I mean, this is millions of square feet.
you mind putting up the,
We have the park, how are they coming in? Are they coming in below on 30th?
thank you.
Yeah, so
Parking garage.
we'll pull up a
Keep
site
going.
plan if you go to maybe the next slide or two, should have it. Keep going.
Is this one, you notice the street's cut off? The
Actually,
comparison.
you can use the slide before this, that'll be fine, we can review it from here.
See, but on that one, guys, you see that the street's not there.
So the important thing in the change in the plan on 33rd Street, and Kim went through that, right? By raising that and allowing that to be an access point to our site and the site to the north, that allows us to get rid of the roads in the middle, right? And that becomes now part of the park. So that's the trade-off there, which we view as a major positive, right? In terms of pedestrian access, it's gonna be direct crosswalks on 11th Avenue to come over from 31st Street,
No,
32nd Street.
I'm asking how the commercial,
Office.
no, how you're gonna service the building? The garbage, the parking, how they getting in? How the
Loading
trucks coming in?
docks.
Where's the loading docks?
Yeah,
Because are they all now gonna go underneath 33rd?
no.
Okay. Because I just don't see where all this is.
Yeah, I mean, we have detailed plans on that, which we could share.
Because we don't, I mean, just compared to the park, like how they getting in.
So
I'm
in
not
general,
tall enough, Ken, maybe you can point.
so generally, the north development, all the access from the major drop off to parking to loading, all entrances come in here
On 33rd.
on 33rd.
I know, but so that's my point, guys, it's all usage now coming on top where we could have a park. I'd rather have them come in off the west side highway and underneath.
Yeah.
Might be way better.
The problem is there are trains underneath.
Well, no, you're raising the roof.
Right, but if you're in the lower level.
Farmers here, guys, when the High Line came, and we know the distance 30 feet down, and they wanted their access, you probably presented back then.
Right,
I understand the topography there,
right.
but we're brainstorming here,
Right.
and this is what we're here to talk about.
No, I
So
agree.
it's something to look about, because
So just to explain.
I don't see, you're gonna get all the trucks and everything.
But they're on 11th Avenue.
But
The loading docks
if
are
we
11th
go on Mount Avenue, right, we have a very small piece here that allows for going on railroad access. I think we should
And then to the other side.
and the marking.
Yes.
This point, so if we extend that road at that level, it has to be at the level if you extend it. DOT wants this to be solid, earth, not a bridge. You're basically next to the wall, and on the other side of the wall, 2 feet behind it, is a train. So there's no ability, even, because we would love that, to have a basement underneath there for the loading and all that stuff. But right at the property line, below this ground plane, where we now are between 33rd and 11th, is trains.
Right.
And so there,
So now they're gonna go down 33rd and be above level coming into the building.
Which is how it was
as
in
a
the
street,
previous
as a
iteration.
city street.
I think we're losing a park there, it should be a park. So
Yeah, can you share what the
the
loading dock is?
turn around on the other side?
Show the actual truck loading dock is. It's on 11th Avenue.
Should we change the,
Migration.
And then these buildings obviously are lower, and so we do have a building, and so there is a loading dock entrance for the office building. There's the daycare, school, there's a residential drop off at that lower 30th Street.
Below, right.
And so that allows us to bring all vehicular access that previously was utilizing these two private, they are called private, but I just reiterated the zoning text, they are private roads. All that access are coming into.
Guys, that's great, because what you just said,
Yes.
you're building the big platform right there. So 2009 doesn't mean anything anymore. You don't need to try to sell this on what could happen. Because economically,
You're asking
want
about
to
where
hear
access
anything?
goes. But the access is on the streets.
I like that it's underneath that a little better, I understand. Just one of my questions.
Okay.
I don't want, get me wrong here, guys. I love this program. I love the way you're going in there. I think it's great. I'm just going through, my job is to try to get more more affordable housing, right? Okay. We love to talk about power. Right? Could you look into some alternate power for like the pavement in the park that produces some power, there's just some lights? We have to talk to the Parks Department in here. They can't give us one solar power light for one thing.
Happy
We would love to get a wind to say, here's a little wind, one rotation, one that runs this over here.
We are
We would love
on board
to see
with
some
that,
of that.
the innovation is something.
Wait,
that-
I can't let him go. Chris, Chris.
Just gotta get a plan, I'm sorry.
Chris, real quick. We're the board that got money out of the cruise ships to give $1 for every person that came up with those.
Not yet.
Hold on, but we would love to know what you guys are gonna be doing for the parks on an annually basis, the High Line, Hudson River Park, just something to think about. Sure. It would be great for us to know.
We have a very aggressive community
I
donation.
would think so, and I just would think that would help
Back briefly on it.
to say, hey, we know this is, they're committed to this, because these guys are really trying to raise money to keep these maintenance on the parks. So, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Started late, I gotta get a plane, but we're happy to come back and talk.
Yes, that would be great to let us know.
Real quick question on the casino.
Sure.
Is it like a high rollers casino? I mean, I've been to Vegas and the Wynn,
Well,
but is it like what? What is it?
Our company is a 5-star company. We have the most 5 stars in the world. In every market we're in, we're ranked as the highest quality. This would be a very high quality resort, high quality casino, restaurants. We assume it would be 5-star because all the rest of our resorts are. So no criticism of our competitors, but this would be top of the market for quality of the gaming. As I said earlier, it'd be about 5% of the building. So even though it's known as a casino, most of it would be hotel rooms, restaurants. We're not doing entertainment because we don't want to compete with Broadway. So we'd rather send customers to Broadway than compete with them. So there won't be a big theater like we usually do or that kind of thing. But a little bit of retail, but not a lot because we don't want to compete with local retail. So the bulk of it would be food and beverage, gaming, casino, spa, conference space, meeting space, like you'd see in a Las Vegas hotel.
So it's like how many tables, how many slot machines, like.
We can get
lobbies
through-
of it?
It's all in the filing, but it's about a 200,000, little over 200,000 square foot gaming, which if you've seen our resort in Boston, it's a little bigger than that, about the same size, similar to Las Vegas, so, but we can get you all that. all those-
Boston has a Wynn casino.
Yep, we have a Wynn
Okay.
Casino in Boston, and it's different configuration, but similar in many ways.
Okay. Great.
So then, just so
Our main focus here is not on the casino.
Yes.
So the 2 elevators for the High Line, you guys pay for them and maintain them, does all the other
Thank
ones
you,
on the
Chris.
High Line always break?
Yeah, those are our
So you guys have to run them?
Yes.
In conjunction with them?
Yes.
Now, the Highlanders always asked us for a space where they could use for garbage, and is that built into this program somewhere?
We'd be happy to talk to them about it.
So we're gonna work on one, I can talk to you about my notes. And then a wind study,
Yes,
was that, did I miss that?
we've done a wind study.
Good. That's great.
Highland representatives.
We'll talk about it in
Talk
discussion.
about it.
Let's, Roberta and I have some stuff in.
Well, the reason I asked about a wind study, Chair, is that I would love to see some turbines
Yeah.
and get some power off it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
It's on my
something, so I just wanted to make sure that some of you guys could look at, because we're on the environmental committee, we're gonna get some winds. And of course, over 30, but I don't, there we go.
Next.
Another
person over here for that too.
So I did want to ask if, just sort of summarizing the draft EIS. I mean, in theory, you are comparing this to the existing zonings, commercial and residential development. Is there any metric upon which this has a more adverse, like, impact than what is allowed in your present zoning?
So, yeah, we did find, there are a few, and Patrick, maybe you can speak to that, but we studied and the impacts were tied to traffic and the shadows, but I believe that's a technical matter just because of how many buildings we assumed in the baseline that would. Fullness of time, it would be no shadow impact, but in the year that we studied it, it was a shadow impact. There were some air quality questions in the EIS in the draft. We do believe that as we go through the process of analyzing those in more detail, we're gonna find solutions to those issues so that won't be a challenge going forward. And I think there were maybe one more mitigation category that we're evaluating, but we're still in the draft, hoping to get through all those things. That's where we are.
And then I did want to follow up on Brad's point about community money, but I do know, and I'm mentioning this not like in the context of many community priorities, but if you have happened to speak with Hudson River Park, they're seeking like funding to, I guess, complete work on a pier that is almost directly adjacent to this project. And so I did want to raise that if that is a potential community benefit, I'm not, that in theory could be something that the committee has been on the record.
We did present to the advisory committee for Hudson River Park a few weeks ago. And we have been longtime supporters of the park, including, you know, our own volunteer hours and significant, you know, financial contributions to the park. So that's a relationship we want to continue.
No, I think we're gonna,
It's just a small note. The first four figures in the shadow section, the little text box that describes what season, every single one says winter. So there's no way to know, because,
There is summer, winter.
yeah, but unfortunately, the actual image, the box says the figure illustrates the range of shadows that would occur on an analysis day representing winter. And that box is copied on every single image, even though it shows different shadows. So, you know, there is a time period where the Javits is fully shadowed, and there is a time period where it's not shadowed at all. So I think that would help to know what season, because if it's shadowed in winter, that's not the growing season. But if it's shadowed in the growing season, that's a big problem.
Okay, we'll look into that.
You mentioned that you reduced from 1,600 to 725 parking spaces. Can you show us where those spaces are and who they're for?
Yeah,
So
so
how people get to them?
absolutely. So they're on the north and the south. There are about 500 spaces on the north side, coming in from the 33rd.
Janine, can you keep, go forward on the,
I think this is okay.
is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. And then on the south side, there's another parking garage at the lower level underneath this open space here. About 225 spaces are accessory to the residential and the office building on the south side.
Okay, you know, we have in the past, tried to discourage, at least in Chelsea land use, residential buildings from having a lot of parking spaces. In the 1980s, there was a zoning text amendment for the Midtown Core that eliminated the requirement for a minimum number of parking spaces, specifically with regard to air quality. That was its intent. It seems to me like 725 is still a lot of parking spaces. We've given the Chelsea Piers for having something like 400 parking spaces. But just to be clear, that's for the residents of the luxury towers. I mean, do the office buildings really need that many parking spaces?
I mean, we have parking on the eastern yard, about 240 spaces on the eastern yard footprint. We have another few in some of the other buildings nearby. I mean, these are all part of the standard accessory parking, you know, amounts for the buildings that we're contemplating. So it's not, we're not asking for additional parking beyond what the code, you know, calls for.
Okay, but the code calls for as much as nothing, right? The new code. The new code allows you guys voluntarily decide how much to go.
Yeah.
So you,
That's right.
they're not mandated.
Correct. That's
So you could voluntarily say no parking spots. Right? It could work for people.
Yeah.
Well, we
Some
studied.
of us want more parking.
We went
spots,
from
but I'll get to that.
1,600 to.
No, seriously, to get them off the street, there's gonna be a lot of people coming in here. A lot of people.
Yeah, the goal here, right, we're a very transit
Yeah.
oriented project. I think
It's a
that's
transient.
rare in the circumstance that we're in, you know, especially in the gaming license applications, you think about it. Right, we expect 75% of the people to come here by public transit or some other means besides an auto or a taxi. So I think that's an important component. You know, again, we're all looking at this site relative to itself, right? But when you look in the context of, you know, what else could be out there and where car traffic could be located more broadly in the city. You know, this is actually, you know, attractive from a transit perspective with Penn Station so close by.
I see Patrick is on. Patrick, can you hear me? Patrick, your environmental guy?
Yes.
Yes, hi Janine.
Yeah, can you put your camera on, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Just give me the highlights, because we don't want to take too much time because we have another presentation.
Sure.
What are the give me the environmental highlights as far as the buildings go, as far as like the solar, the wind, like what are you guys doing as far as environmental for the building?
So the buildings do include a lot of renewable features. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
So there's green roofs, there's low flow fixtures, there's low albedo roofs. So there are several features. The project, by virtue of its location right near the new the number 7 subway, the Hudson Yard Station, is very transit oriented. So there are several features of the project, and we can send you a list of all the renewable features. I think BMPs were brought up before. That's best management practices. So the project can incorporate several best management practices. High efficiency HVAC, it's electric. The project will be almost completely electric, so
No,
we can
but,
send you guys.
okay, electric from the grid, obviously, not, so there's nothing generated on site, right? Like I said, solar or anything like that?
Yeah, it'll be all electric in terms of, not using natural gas. Yeah, electric from the grid.
Right, so no self-sustaining measures is what I'm saying. I'm just asking.
We're not ruling those out, but we haven't assumed them in the environmental impact.
We're asking you to look and see what you can do. I'm not asking for, some miracles,
Yeah.
but could you maybe lead the way in some ideas? That would be great.
And just to,
And then also when you do the construction, how you're leading the way, instead of diesel, you use electric. Let's kind of maybe try to do a component of both to show how much you guys do.
we're happy to be.
There's alternate, because the
Okay.
amount of pollution
Yeah.
that goes in.
Yeah, like, just only because EDC.
Yeah, the meeting's the meeting.
I understand. I love I think the design is great. I especially like the design over the High Line. I think the design looks really great. Like, I think everything about it is pretty spot on. I think you did a really good job of designing this. I actually do like it when there are it's not a contiguous space of one big part, because I like the original when it's broken up, because then people have their own little spots and they go, and it's kind of nice, but it's really well done, as far as the plan. It's nice, very good. The loss of the streets is troubling. The 2 streets that were there, I know we fought for, we wanted that, just so it would be connectivity to the community, to the rest of the neighborhood, but now when you lose the streets, it's kind of like a related campus. It's just, it's.
I would argue the opposite, right?
I know, because everyone's gonna say, oh, streets, cars, but as far as how it's integrated into the neighborhood or the rest of the area.
I do want, I hear the argument of, the grids, architecture and urbanism.
Yep, the grid.
Mark in New York, master plan architect of development you're sitting in. The challenge I have with understanding the dramatic of 31st to the 2nd, both of those streets stop blocks east.
Yep.
That they do not exist. And so to establish them at the pedestrian level on 11th feels a little strange. I do agree, again, the buildings itself, the towers are aligning themselves with obviously the grid. So if you see them, they'll be kind of registering the grid in the sky. So in New Jersey, West Side Highway, you'll see them marching along Hudson Yards and Manhattan West, just like you see in Midtown, you recognize that grid. But I feel as people meander, walk or navigate the city to meet Western Railroads, you come on 11th Avenue, High Line, Hudson River Park. Those are your entry points, and rather than a street or cars can go, and yes, that is inviting to the city street, but no different than 31st Street and described as a private street. This is a private street with sidewalks and trees. Now we're saying we have 160-foot wide park meeting the street, the avenue.
So I get what you're saying with that. I think the reality, you're saying it's a public park, I think the reality of it is going to be, since it's no longer residential primarily, it's now commercial and casino. It's going to primarily be, that park is not gonna be for New Yorkers or people around there. It's gonna be for people coming out and smoking out of the casino. They're gonna come down from the casino, and the people from the casino are gonna use it, and the people who are on break are gonna come down and use it. I'm a mother, I'm not gonna come bring my kid in front of a casino to use a park. I'm just saying, I just think that, you know what I mean, I
It
think
depends on
the
its
use,
design and how we set it up, I
The
mean,
use
the
is gonna be
entry is on the north side, you know, there are differences, the intent from our design, 100% is to make that feel and look like a public space that is accessible to this whole community, that's vital to this.
no, absolutely, I think the design is great, I think it looks beautiful, I think that could be it, I just think the reality of it is that it's gonna be for the people in your hotel, in the casinos, in the
I'm
hotel.
not sure we got a lot of neighbors nearby now. You know,
Yeah.
and maybe
I
that-
mean, I love the High Line. But added a piece to it, I think it's amazing, we all think it's amazing. The High Line is, and for the locals, a little longer than the amateurs, and they walk many blocks. They use it to navigate, they use it to have a coffee and sit and look at the sunset. But it's also a destination for many tourists, local and international.
Absolutely,
So I feel a little
pulled,
that this is saying this is a private park.
yeah,
And the streets were, I agree, the residential gives a different context, 100%.
Yeah,
It's a different framework, I'm gonna argue that, as a park and how it's connected and how it serves the larger neighborhood. I think it is for the community at large.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about it as a park, I guess it could become a park unto itself, or could you move the entire casino the street width north and give it to the park space between the buildings at the center of the site?
Like big over the street.
Yeah,
You're
I mean,
also,
if we're giving up the street anyway, as Brad has suggested, instead of it being a linear park to the north of the casino, that park space go into the center and the casino to the north.
I mean, I think what that creates a challenge for is the block north of us, which will need access somehow on the south side, right? You know, that space of the grid between the buildings is gonna be important to the property too.
But if it's just like a service lane, it doesn't need sidewalks or multiple lanes. It doesn't need to be the usual 65 feet wide.
Interesting proposition. It triggers a whole other set. And if you're concerned about the city grid extending, 30th Street is actually the one street that is in the east-west city grid that goes from river to river.
when you are breaking the streets, you know, because the street has some relationship to the number of the pier. Are you aware of that? I mean, if you subtract 40 from the number of the pier, you get the street that it's at the extension of. So you're making, if you take the street away,
Yeah.
you're essentially making a dead end of the street and then starting it again.
Correct, but, and I get it, it's a Denham street, so we're not arguing about that, and so it is another tourist street that connects to 12th Avenue. But if you look at the city, you look at FDR, and even on the river sides, there are precedents where streets are public, tree lines, DOT match, and they end up in the dead end cul-de-sac that turn around. Surrounded by residential, surrounded, so I think that it is not your typical street, it's not connecting to West Side Highway and FDR on the other side, but it's not an atypical condition that one sees in New York City. One, the streets meet these big avenues highway. So I hear your point, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm not also pointing out that this is not an atypical condition that we're creating that does not exist in New York City. In Old Fabric on the east side, or in the river side development on 57th Street, but there's also a park between residential buildings that meets the avenue. And then that ends on the riverside. So there are similarities, and one can argue, I like it, I hate it, I think it's better, it's worse. There's many flavors.
I think you'd have a better argument if that street went somewhere, like to another part of the city. And was an actual A to B transit point instead of a dead end street.
It was a big hassle with the World Trade Center streets when they stopped and then started again, and people couldn't find where they were going.
I just had two more bigger questions into the, waste. Where, like waste, is it all inside, all garbage pickup, all? Or is that premature to ask?
I don't have a specific answer for you, you know, we're.
Garbage trucks is gonna be a lot of,
Would your concept be to make it similar to the current Hudson Yards where everything is through a private call or underground?
That would be the intent. Yeah.
underground, I would think, right?
Well, in the loading docks for the buildings, right?
Yeah.
It's not that we're above the tracks and those
Yeah.
things. It's above ground, but it's in the building.
I would just mention that the EIS does not talk at all about the movement of waste inside the buildings. It does not bring up the idea of using pneumatic tubes within the buildings as a way of moving waste. And it doesn't talk about the way recycling would be facilitated within the buildings, even though it does mention recycling. So I think those would be concerns of however you comment on the larger EIS.
My last big thing, I had two little, very small points, but, can you just explain to me? Janine, can you go forward, to show the, west side, like Hudson River Park? I understand the corners of the corners, keep going, I think keep going. Keep going. I guess. I'll keep going. I know that the corners are,
I think if you go way back, there was
Was it
a
back?
slide, that had the arrows.
yeah, looking.
Well, it's like one of the-
Like there, like right there, just that's good, that's good. So I know that for Hudson River Park, right? What concerns me, what is all along 12th Avenue there? I know there are entry points you highlighted at the corners.
12th Avenue here.
Yes, along,
So that's.
is that wall, is that
Well,
just,
basically the train tracks come where we up to the existing wall.
so that's gonna be all cut off from the Hudson River Park?
Well, the park's on the other side of the avenue.
Hudson
Right, yeah, but I mean, so that, I'm saying the Hudson River Park is just gonna, there's no flow, it's gonna be from the corner.
It's gonna be a good one.
Yes. I just-
That's a shame, but I mean, I don't think there's anything you can do about that, right?
Yeah, like I said, the tracks really come right to the behind.
Yeah. I know
It's
that's,
gonna be the flood wall that really gonna.
Yeah.
Resilience the airspace. And that's its right, just south of the High Line, western edge.
I know that was a concern of some of the Hudson River Park advisor, of some of the, that it was just gonna be too cut off. We had a whole big thing here and then the park, it's not.
The reality is if you're a pedestrian, you're gonna wanna be on the west side of 12th Avenue at that.
Anyway, or the
stretch,
corners and.
Right, and if you wanna come east, you'll pick a spot. It's either the north or the south. Where you-
And if you're here, you have the median, again, visually, you have the median up your foreground and then also the High Line with perspective. Like,
Yeah, and looking up at it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your foreground is the median, the greenery and the trees, and then the elevator, you'll see this High Line, and that's what we're reading that kind of.
two very small things, and it might be very premature. Drop off for schools and school buses or on 30th, I'm
Yeah,
guessing?
30th Street.
Along with the delivery and all that stuff, okay. And I know, I'm gonna end off with my favorite topic, public charging stations. Any of them here? I saw there were charging stations, but even public charging stations accessible
For,
cars.
for cars.
I mean, the garage can be open to the public, right, so that's.
Without fee.
I mean, I don't know if that's.
I know, it's very premature,
Yeah.
it's, we're not talking, I'm just saying that we need access to public chargers. For what, for, it's not, it's just a little, it's my bugaboo. That's it.
And there's a programming plan for the park?
Yes, and obviously it's gonna be developed over time, right, we're at the very early stages of that, I mean, working on this, but their idea is that there are programming activities that are daily, that things people do on a regular basis, you come out, you're walking your dog. There are programming events that happen on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, and then things that happen as more, annual kind of things, so.
What I would like with your program is maybe to work with the Niger Housing and have some programs that relate directly to them and really do a reach out there to reach that park. All right, that would be good.
That's great.
One of your programming notes.
Sure.
Thank you.
So other comments, Dave is first, other comments from anybody after Dave, including the public, the gentleman who wanted to talk before I left.
Right now, right over here.
But go ahead, that's a good day for.
Oh, sorry.
Right now, I think it's like parking north of 33rd, right?
That's over by
Yeah, so that's the NC lot that's currently parked lot.
And is there any future plan for that?
I mean, we hope so, but that's state separate property.
So, I mean, we could discuss shifting everything to Streetswood North and giving that space back to the park, right?
Well, we can discuss
We'll,
anything.
we'll discuss, there are, we discussed that last night.
Oh,
And
sorry.
don't apologize. That's what Paul will bring us up to date on where we kind of, so it's good that you said it. It's kind of what.
We didn't presume to be able to take over a public.
Yeah.
We presumed to be able to take the.
Except for
Except for 33rd, except for 33rd.
Thirty-first to 36th are, it's a street, that's pretty done. Cool. I was on the mall, so I'm not. Just so.
Who else?
That's it, David. David, just introduce yourself so people know.
Sure. Hey, I'm David Stewart. I'm president of Block Association up in Hell's Kitchen. First of all, thanks for your expertise. I appreciate the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions and a comment. I think you had mentioned that every building casts a shadow. I would just suggest that shorter buildings cast shorter shadows, right? So,
Yes.
the other thing is like parks. I think what I consider a public park, right, is a park that is extremely easy to access. When I look at this plan, I basically see these massive buildings that buttress a park that you guys say is bigger than Bryant Park, right? But the footprint of the buildings, the new buildings you're proposing are probably 3 or 4 times the size of Bryant Park. So just based on the footprint I saw, so I don't know what the scale is, but the park space, you know, that sounds impressive that it's bigger than Bryant Park. But compared to the space in that entire footprint, the park space is fairly small. And it seems to me, like I'll agree with Leslie, it seems to me a little bit like a panopticon, right? Like, so it's like the folks that are in the building get to look out and they get to see all the park space, but I can pretty much guarantee that the public, like New York City residents, that public is not gonna feel like this is a public park because it is just surrounded by so much gigantic infrastructure. So, that's one thing that really concerns me because public park space should be very easily accessible. And I think the other thing that, I don't know if that's a concern, but affordable housing is such an issue like everywhere, but in the city, it is like extreme. And I wonder if you guys could just tell us, when we say affordable housing, like where does that affordable housing start? Like what kind of price range are we talking? Because I know currently in Hudson Yards, like a 1-bedroom goes from, you know, like if you're renting goes from like $8,000 to $12,000 for a 1-bedroom. The 2-bedroom is, you know, 15 to 20. So affordable, and I mean, on your guys' Unrelated's website, you know, one of the things you guys say in your mission is that your mission is to build inclusive communities. So if there's X number of very expensive $12,000 a month rentals, and then XY number of affordable housing, it's a tiny fraction of the overall apartments. And I understand your business, you gotta make money. But it just seems to me that there could be an opportunity here for more affordable housing, and then affordable housing that actually might really be affordable, because affordable is starting at 3,500 or 2,800. I can guarantee you there's a huge swath of Hell's Kitchen that is not affordable to.
So I can address that broadly. First off, Related is one of the, if not the largest owner of affordable housing across the country, over 50,000 units. Within New York City, we have done tremendous amount of affordable housing, very affordable.
It's about 15% of your total, like I did the research, so it's about, and this is the research on the site, it's about 15% of your total, so about 15% of, across all your properties in the city is quote unquote affordable, and then some of that though starts at $2,800 for a 1-bedroom, right? So, and I can give you some of the names of these places, but I'm sure you know them. So
yeah,
affordable and public, those two things, I'm trying to balance those out, and quite frankly, I'm not.
But you have a
really
question,
seeing-
is there a question for, like a question?
Well,
The questions I already asked.
He's asking what the income bands of the affordable housing.
So, yeah, just to respond to that, so that was the broad view of the 50,000 units across the country, right? Within Community Board 4, we have about 6,000 units of housing that we've built and managed right now. Half of that is affordable, right? And what I mean by affordable is there's an area median income calculation that the different programs create, and it depends, it could be, 60, 70, 80% of the area median income, and then you can only pay 30% of your income as rent. So those numbers are quite a bit lower in rent than the numbers that you're quoting there, like significantly affordable space. We have plans for another really 7,000 units of housing in this community board, some of it on site here, 1,500 apartments, of which those 324 affordable units we have area median income restrictions. I don't know the exact percentage, but it is really affordable space, right? The city needs housing across the board and needs it at all levels. I explain that too. But these are meaningfully affordable spaces. So I think that answers the question. I don't know if there was more that you want. I'm sure there's a lot.
It's probably a longer discussion.
That's fine.
I just want to bring that question into the record.
This isn't a housing discussion, but I haven't heard the percentage of affordable and what income bands they are. What percentage of housing is be affordable in these units and what the income bands are for those.
Right, so the
And I
plan,
haven't heard that it's permanently affordable.
so it is permanently affordable. The plan is for 324 units out of the roughly 1,500 that are proposed in that building. So it's I don't know what that percentage is, but that's a proposal in the building on the southwest of the project.
And you dealt with that, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's about.
So you're about, can I add some color, sorry, from this?
Why don't we, can we,
I don't.
during the, let's then go, and then we have a thing, then we'll do community discussion. Committee discussion, excuse me.
You're gonna do community discussion after, sure.
We do committee, yes. Sorry,
Can I talk when this section ends, then we might.
sure.
Thanks.
Any other
Well, maybe.
questions from the public? No?
I don't want to.
Okay,
Yes, right.
sorry,
Anything else, guys?
thank you. Janine, any hands raised? Thank you so much.
No hands up.
No? Okay. Thank you. She knows I forget.
You forget the virtuals.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Should ask timeline.
Oh, this isn't,
So for the approvals process or for the construction, I can give you both.
No, you said June for the
Right.
resort time, right? And you need to get this approved so then you can help you with your application.
Right.
Resort, right?
That's correct.
And then after that, you're thinking how long?
We would start construction in 2026, and the plan is roughly 5-year construction.
And which phase would the school go first?
The intent is to do everything
So it's
together.
a full on press for all of it.
That would be the objective, yes.
And you guys are still giving money to the Highland, right? Wasn't that part of the deal?
So we have an obligation on the eastern yards, for a maintenance, agreement, down. So yeah, it's about $1 million a year,
Does it go up now?
CPI.
Do we want to let Paul go?
yeah, we're gonna
Oh,
let them read, we're gonna let them go. We're gonna-
Oh, wait.
No. Thank you, guys.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, it's a great reminder, thank you. Paul, do you wanna,
So if they're just gonna present it, and then you go to the discussion all the way.
Yeah.
So you want to get a committee discussion.
okay,
Well, maybe the committee discussion would be affected by what you're going to say.
well, that's why he's gonna wait, he's gonna.
If your procedures here are applicants presented, then this
Yeah.
discussion, I'll wait till the applicants are done presenting.
Okay.
That's fine. Oh, you want me to-
EDC,
No,
next.
EDC.
EDC.
Huh?
EDC.
No, EDC is next. They're
EDC is next.
I'll wait.
We'll do-
I'll wait.
Oh, that seems hackneyed. It seems like we could finish this discussion.
Leslie wants to have all the committee discussion after EDC.
Yeah.
Let them present and get out, and then committee.
Yeah, that's what we
discussion.
do. usually.
So EDC, go ahead.
Okay. EDC, go ahead.
We have one person joining us virtually, Allison Hughes, who just
Sure, Janine,
Yeah, she's coming over now.
I believe, thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Most of you know me. My name is Tara Johnson with the Government and Community Relations team at EDC. We have Allison Dees, who's our Vice President of Cruise, joining us, and Jackie Tank, as well as Assistant Vice President from the Development Group and our Asset Management team. So I know the last time we were here, early summer, I want to say, we talked about the shore power feasibility study, and I know over the last year and a half, we've been here on a couple different updates. There was Pier 90 extension from Parks America. There was also long-term agreements that we talked about. So wanted to come back here to be able to talk about all of these things and how they fit together. And how that relates to the master plan that Leslie alluded to. We can go to the next slide. We'll start with an overview of just kind of all the pieces for the Manhattan Cruise Terminal that we've been talking about and how they all kind of fit together. Go into the long-term agreements, which is, you remember, the 3 cruise companies that we were entering agreements into that we talked about a year ago, the community fund, shore power, and then land on the master plan. Go to the next slide. So for folks who are unfamiliar with the cruise terminal, we're talking about the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, especially for this presentation, we're talking about these 3 piers, Pier 88, 90, and 92. Right now, so there are, I want to say, was that 5 berths possible at these piers, but only 3 of them are in commission right now. Pier 88 is the area that sees the most cruise activity. Pier 90 is only half active, but even this one is is not as operating to the same extent that Pier 88 is, and Pier 92 is completely out of commission. So over the past year, we have been doing, an analysis of the Pier 90 apron extension. Now, this would have been to extend this full pier so that it can accommodate different cruise ships. And we've also been doing analysis of Pier 92 to understand the conditions and how, we can bring it back to life. But in parallel to that, we've also been doing the shore power feasibility study. We've spoken to you a little bit about how there needs to be an improvement of traffic conditions. There's also been, legislation passed that required traffic mitigation plan. There was also the long-term agreements that would have guaranteed berthing space to the cruise companies. So there's been a lot of different things happening all at once, but not really consolidated. And so part of what that has created as an issue for us is not being able to really plan holistically. The last time we were here talking about shore power, we mentioned that we know that it's feasible, but there's a lot of missing parts here that we don't know. First, one of them being the infrastructure conditions and how we can invest in the future to actually build out a system. And obviously, when we're talking about shore power, that also has impacts on everything else. That impacts the amount of space that the cruise terminal has in general, for whether that's like the flow of passengers, whether that's cruise ships actually coming in. And also this terminal overall is pretty outdated. It dates back to, it was first kind of established as a cruise terminal, I want to say in the early 30s, so don't quote me on that. And it's had some updates obviously, but not for several decades. And so right now the current cruise terminal is not actually functioning as a modern cruise terminal. And it's also only functioning as a cruise terminal. There's a lot of the time that this site, which is huge, is completely inactive. And so we do need to be thinking really strategically about the infrastructure needs and needed investment for this site, not only to future-proof it for the future of the cruise industry, but also to think about how we can integrate all these different infrastructure improvements, build out a shore power system that isn't just functioning temporarily, but can really be effective. And also think about how this site can be a better neighbor to this neighborhood. How can traffic flow better? How can the passengers coming out and, not be interfering with the bikes and the bike path? How can we also, activate and open up some of the public space? I know that was the area around 38 has been something that's come up before. So these are all pieces of a greater puzzle that we want to be thinking about. So going to the next slide, what this means for the long-term agreements though. So as I mentioned, the long-term agreements we announced a year and a half ago as something that we were entering in with 3 cruise lines. That's MSC, which has a huge ship currently docking out of Brooklyn because the Pier 90 space, is not big enough to accommodate it. It's Norwegian and it's Carnival Cruise Lines. Right now we have signed with Norwegian, but we have not been able to move forward with Carnival and MSC because of these infrastructure, limitations that we've had. So we've decided that we're no longer gonna move forward with that. One of the things that came up as an issue there was, we were moving forward with agreements with the cruise lines. For example, we were getting them to commit to shore power by 2028 without actually having the rest of the infrastructure in place to really effectively get them to commit to the things we wanted to commit to. So as we think about the infrastructure, we are still very committed to a lot of the benefits that were coming out of those cruise agreements. The community fund, which originally was something we were building out through the agreements, we still are planning to do, we are still committed to doing. But we're just gonna be looking at it through, we're gonna be pursuing it through a different mechanism, which we'll go into. There are also other pieces here like workforce development and having the cruise lines really strengthening, the New York City and especially the local neighborhoods connections to maritime opportunities and workforce opportunities. We're still very much committed to reducing emissions and improving, the data that we have around that. We're also looking at educational partnerships, and we're still very much committed to building out shore power. We just want to make sure that when we're getting a cruise line to commit to it, through something like an agreement, that we really have something in place, a plan in place for that. So going to the next slide here, for the community funds, so as I mentioned, we are still going to be building this out. Now, instead of having that through an agreement, what we're doing is having that as a requirement through the dockage and wharfage fee. This is a fee that any cruise line, regardless of an agreement or not, pays when they're coming into New York City. So this means that not only Norwegian, Carnival, and MSC, but every single cruise line would be paying this. So this still comes out to about $900,000 per year on average, given the cruise passengers coming through. And this specifically will kick off for 2025 onwards, but I will say we have that commitment from Norwegian, so we will be collecting their funds for the previous year. But then 2025 onward is really where this takes effect for the rest of the cruise lines. So I know over the past year or so, we've been talking about like how will this be administered. So since this is going to be in, we are kind of still in the beginning stages of this, and we want to. We'll be working with Councilmember Botcher to develop a process here that works. But this fund is still going towards this neighborhood. One of the things that, EDC is thinking about overall, beyond just the cruise terminal, is making sure we're strengthening workforce connections. And so that's one of the things that, we'd love to think about of how we can, strategically connect opportunities. It doesn't have to be cruise related, it doesn't have to be maritime related, but just workforce opportunities overall to this neighborhood. But we also obviously want to understand what your priorities are. We know, broadly beautification, sanitation is something that's really important, but definitely want to get into more specifics there to understand how we can make sure this fund is really benefiting this neighborhood holistically. Let's go into the next slide here. Wait for that. So for shore power, as I mentioned, the feasibility study concluded that shore power is feasible, but the pieces that we need to understand are what are the infrastructure improvements needed to be able to actually phase this in effectively. So I know the last time we were here, we talked about, why can't we just put shore power in Pier 88, for example, because that right now is already functioning, and then think about the others later on. And the reason why that's hard is because putting in a shore power system is still going to have huge effects on everything else. And so we can't like divide up this site and work on it piece by piece, because it's going to create another overflow of something else in another direction, which is why we need to be thinking about this really comprehensively. So we are wrapping up the Pier 90 study, which will inform this process, but we'll also be engaging in a full-on comprehensive, what we're calling master planning process for the futures of Piers 88 and 92. And really that process is what is going to help us inform what is actually, the appropriate way to be activating and investing and improving this site for shore power to be able to build out. So, I know this community's been advocating for a short talk for a long time, and it's why we're here today. But right now, we just don't have a specific timeline just yet, because we do need to go through this more holistic process before we get there. But really, the master planning process allows us to do is unify all these different studies, all these policies, and go forward so that we are not just, so that we're able to really do this effectively and also be able to have a framework to inform, not only just the future of phasing in these improvements, but also that helps us to think about how to fund this. I know this is a comprehensive process. All of these things are really complicated and require a lot of investment. And so part of, what our framework will help us do is also strategies about how we can activate public-private partnerships for all these different improvements that are necessary. So going to the master plan piece on this. So what the master plan allows us to do, as I mentioned, is create this framework. And so it does take a look not only at we can go to the next slide. Not only, the infrastructure conditions, but also what does the market look like? Where is the future of industry going to? What are also some other ancillary uses we can think about, depending on the types of scenarios that are possible for the future of the cruise terminal. So as I mentioned, right now the cruise terminal only really functions as a cruise terminal, but there are ways that we can think about how can this improve the whole passenger experience, the neighborhood experience of this site, and maybe even interact with it. So I think part of this is really developing what those scenarios look like. And as part of that, we have this opportunity to also be actively integrating a lot of the feedback that we've been hearing over the years into some more action that's very comprehensive. So we hosted our first workshop last week, the week before, early December, and we will be having 2 more workshops after this, the second being in January and the third being in February. Now, this is a pretty tight timeline because, as we do want to move forward and move quickly with understanding what are the next steps. We don't want to be dragging our feet on the future of these necessary infrastructure improvements, but we do, it is a pretty quick process for this phase of that analysis. And so the first workshop that we held was more generic. It was, to involve people who might not be, as close to what the cruise terminal is, introduce them to what we're thinking about in the process and get some overarching feedback. The second workshop in January will be going more into specifics, especially around I would say the public interaction with the cruise terminal. And then that third final workshop will be more of a report out of what we've heard, how it relates to goals for this project and the possibilities for the future. So I know Leslie and I spoke about this. We definitely want to come back to kind of dive more deeply into that master plan process at the community board meeting, but we also have our staff here who can answer questions about that as well. And the other piece I'll call out here is, as part of the legislation I mentioned, there is a mandated traffic plan that EDC will have to produce for both cruise terminals. And so part of this master planning exercise will allow us to go to produce that as well and be able to, do more comprehensive look at the traffic conditions and think about what needs to be improved to help mitigate some of the issues coming out. So for our next steps in terms of, we can go to the next slide. We, as I mentioned, had our first workshop. If folks were not able to go to that, Janine, if we can go to the next slide. We do have a survey that is open until the end of January. So that is again more of just a collection process for that very overarching feedback. We are tentatively holding the public workshop January 14th. I will circle back with an exact date, location, flyers as well for you to share out. I know we tentatively also spoke about coming back the January meeting to dive more into the master planning process. I know there's a lot of content here to go into, but so for a subsequent meeting, we can go more deeply into the master planning process.
Thank you.
You want to speak?
Yes. So I'm going to preface this. I always let committee speak first, but this one I'm going to speak first on. And you know, Tara and I are friends outside of this, so anything that's said is not directed at Tara, because we talk all the time. I have never been more disappointed in an agency, in a project, in plans than I am, maybe MTA site, maybe. This is one of the biggest disappointments to the community, and that I've ever witnessed or been a part of. EDC came to us after all of our advocacy over many years in 2023 and had a big press conference, a big boo-ha-ha. We're giving you shore power by 2028. Not only that, we are getting $1 from every person that comes off those boats, and it's going directly into the community, which we advocate for, because the community, the immediate community of Hell's Kitchen, and maybe some extended, were the ones that were directly impacted by this disgusting, dirty air that has been choking us for years and years and years. And we were all so thrilled when you guys committed to shore power by 2028, and we fought for that hard. And then when I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ports of America, they also presented to us, and they committed financially themselves to renovate Pier 90, was it 90 or?
Yeah.
Pier 90. So, and they were saying, not only are we gonna foot the bill for this, but we are going to foot the bill for infrastructure for shore power on Pier 90. So when you guys are ready, we're gonna have all the mechanisms in place. And we were like, hooray, and we threw the confetti and everyone was happy. And then a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, we had an offline discussion, or presentation, saying that we never committed to shore power, or by 2028 at first was said, and then said we're pulling back from that. We now, there's no timeline for shore power. We're not doing it. We have to look at this more holistically. That's the buzzword, more holistically. Which I was shocked at. The second shock was the $1, and I think it's changed here a little bit. The language has changed slightly. The $1 of the community fund is no longer a community fund. It's now going to an EDC bank account that is going to be for maritime workforce development. That's the quote, maritime workforce development, which again threw me almost off the edge. But I came back. I just have to say that we are in talks with our local elected officials. Carl is here. We're still going to push for shore power for 2028. I really think it's been a lot of smoke and mirrors with this master plan. You guys had your own study. I think it took almost 2 years. Your own study, Jacobs was on and said, this is totally feasible. You can do it tomorrow. Not you could do it tomorrow, but we could start tomorrow. It's totally feasible. Con Ed came and said, we can connect, no problem. There is no problem. Obviously, there have to be the steps, but there wasn't any obstacles. And for EDC now to come and say, you know, we're gonna look at this holistically, we just think it's a smokescreen. You can definitely at least start the infrastructure to get funneled into there. So then when you do have this master plan, which by the way is 30 years from start to finish, that we can just plug in. If Miami can do it in a few years, if Vancouver, if all these other ports, Los Angeles can do it in a few years, I don't understand why this is dragging on and on. Anyway, I can, everything you're hearing, I've told you, but just for the record, this is extremely disappointing. I can't say that enough, but I'll go to the committee, though I just probably poisoned the whole well of comments.
I'm glad you're friends. I hate to see.
Carol, please both be able. But
Do you want me to respond to those?
no.
I would like to hear a response.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I mean, completely hear you. It is very frustrating that I know we said 2028 as a date to commit to it, and that is no longer something we can stick to. And I think, you know, part of the issue there is 2028 has been a date that the industry standards have been in terms of shore power readiness for a lot of ships available. And so in the long-term agreements, when you know, those were being created, that was kind of the focus for that date. In the meantime, and those long-term agreements have been something that we were, you know, in development for a while. But more recently, you know, through the Pier 90 analysis work that was happening as part of the apron extension, as part of the Pier 92 analysis work, as well, we've been learning about the conditions of the piers that they're a lot, they're not easy to just build up a shore power system in. And so I think one of the pieces of this and the reason why we're walking back that 2028 date is because we can't just commit to ourselves to an industry standard. We need to commit to ourselves to a standard for these piers. Right now, the things that we've been learning over these analyses in recent years has changed the information that we thought we had around being able to move forward. The feasibility study itself also was like more hyper-focused on the energy connection piece, not the full-on build-out of the system. Now, again, I think another issue of being hyper-focused on one piece of the puzzle and not thinking about it comprehensively. I'll try to not say holistically to announce it a lot. So yes, it is. I mean, I hate to be delivering the news of the fact that we are no longer doing 2028 as our date. But what I'm hoping that this opportunity gives us is to be able to actually have all the pieces here so that we can build out a more concrete timeline that we can actually stick to. Now the community fund piece, it is still a community fund, and I don't want to give the impression that that is being walked back. I think one of the conversations that Leslie and I had was that maritime workforce and workforce more generally is something that that EDC is interested in and wants to see as something that we're building back in New York City. The maritime industry exists but has been underinvested in. And so, across the city, that's something that we want, that we know is a priority to us. This community fund though is for this community. And so if that doesn't resonate, that is important information because we want to make sure that this is going to something that this community needs. So I would also be very open to understanding, what specifically this fund could be used for from all of you. Workforce is something that really matters as a goal for EDC, and we would love to see opportunities that we can even connect workforce to whatever the priorities are as well. If that's something like wanting to use this fund for sustainability purposes or getting at that goal. Maybe there's some sort of workforce and sustainability connection that we can make here, maybe not. So, I think this is, again, we're still in the early phases. This is not like, yes, EDC is involved in the sense that we are between the cruise lines and the community and in channeling this fund. This is not a fund to come back to EDC for us to use for whatever we want. And I want to make that very clear to all of you. But this is part of the discussion that we would also really love to have here as well.
Thanks, Janine, can you go back to the berths, the picture of the berths? I just want to make one thing clear, I think we have, but just in case, because it's been thrown around the communities, which is unfortunate, is that the cruise ship industry is ready to plug in. We're the ones that are behind. So there's a lot of talk that says, well, we have to force the cruise ship industry. If we do legislation, then the cruise ship industry will then plug in. That is not the case anymore. The case is they are plugging them all over, and in a few years, I think all the major cruise liners is gonna be up to 70% of their fleets are gonna be able to plug in. So just to put it in perspective, because I think I saw some comments that are saying, well, we should make the cruise ship industry really, plug in. They would love to. They would love to in this case. In this case, they can't. Also, I want to bring this up only because it just picks at the scab again. Pier 92, I don't know if anyone remembers, that was a Vornado responsibility for many, many years, and they let it fall into the river. And we begged EDC, I think it was 15 years, they were responsible to build that up. And we begged EDC, if they were gonna do Pier 94 in their big glossy studios on the river, that they have to stick to their commitment of 92. Because that money, they have to, or else the city's gonna foot the bill for it. And EDC did not. EDC said, we're
let them off the hook.
Yeah.
They also said Pier 94 was falling down and then built right on top.
Yeah, so
So
that has nothing to do necessarily with shore power, but it has to do with this board's relationship with EDC on this topic for the last few years, and I'll let.
Okay, go ahead. Let me go around the other way.
Yeah.
Start with you.
Tara, like, is this sort of like walking back or, just like is it a funding issue? Like, or is it a safety issue? Is it like, oh, we realize, okay, if we build by 2028, we're gonna have to rebuild it again, so we don't wanna waste money, like, it feels like we are making perfect the enemy of what is necessary. And to me, this is like the bureaucracy that, like, I don't want New York to like, I want us to be we are the greatest city in the world, you know, and we need to lead on stuff like this, you know, so what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I will defer to Allison about some specifics here, but I think in general, you know, before we were thinking about shore power, we were thinking about it as, you know, this unique thing that we just need to build that out. The conditions that we've been learning about the condition of the piers themselves is really, I think, the new piece that has changed a lot of this. And to your point earlier about Miami and Los Angeles, I think what makes this unique is that these piers are really old. Like even the configuration we're calling these finger piers, you know, it makes it difficult for certain build outs of infrastructure improvements to happen. And so when we're talking about shore power, a lot of the biggest barriers that we're thinking about are the space needs here. It does require a lot to build out the connection points, the substations as well. And so we can't, you know, it's not as simple as just kind of like building a plug and being able to plug in. Like it does require a lot of real estate, which is kind of why we are really confined, and it's very challenging to just build out something so that we can, you know, be ahead of the curve, so to speak. And even, you know, globally, this shore power, you know, we're not necessarily behind in shore power. We were the first on the East Coast to build it in Brooklyn, which is again a very different configuration from Manhattan. It is just one berth. There's a lot more space in that area. So that is why, you know, New York City is the first, but it could only do it at Brooklyn at the time. This is a lot more challenging just because of the space, the configuration, also like how many ships and the types of ships that are coming out here as well.
Well, it took like, I don't know, 2 years to do the feasibility study. I'm just wondering, like, why don't we figure that out during the feasibility?
Yes, during the study.
Like,
Yeah.
That's your study.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of part of the, you know, the missing information that I'm alluding to. Like, yes, it's true that the study being done could have probably looked at all of this, which, you know, unfortunately, this master plan is happening now and it wasn't happening earlier. Part of that also, you know, related to COVID, putting a pause on plans, the cruise industry being completely dried out for a while. So I mean, you know, part of this is certainly, yeah, some mistakes. Part of it is also affected by kind of just the ways in which certain projects advanced and some projects had to get stalled.
Roberta, where did shore power end up in our priorities?
Top
Number one.
It was
Number
number
one.
one. This was like the number one thing.
For bid.
Yeah.
For our-
I think it was like
But
I think it was like third or fourth of the.
overall for all rural community.
yeah, so this was something I think that, anyways, last point is, I think if we could get air filters for the community from that 900,000, because this whole area between Gateway, Hudson Yards being built out, like, you know, we already have the worst air quality of all it's like air filters are very expensive as well as the filter replacements.
The other side of that question is, what are the requirements for the ships that are coming into the piers, since they don't have shore power, for their air emissions? Garbage burning plants are required to have air filters. I imagine these ships have something, but what are the requirements and what are the actual emissions from the ships? I went down I went down there, and one of the ships, when you looked at the stack, you could see the air behind it, but another one actually had smoke coming out of it. So it seems to me that guy's not welcome.
It could be.
Well, if you look at the buildings, they put off a lot when they start to. So I'm saying it's.
The sources of air emissions are all over the place, but we're just talking about the ships.
But what I'm saying is that it's not easy to start one without doing that for a little bit.
A few questions. So 2028, Leslie mentioned 30 years for a master study. To go through this holistic process, like what are we talking about in terms of an actual timeline to get to shore power at this point?
Again, because we need to go through this master planning process, I can't give a defined timeline right now. The 30 years that we're talking about, so the master plan is giving a framework for the next 30-year outlook for the terminal. So what that means is not that shore power is happening in 30 years. What it means is that we're looking at like, how can we be future-proofing this for the next 30 years? So while I can't say, you know, shore power is gonna come at X year, what this will look at is kind of like the phasing and how can we also make sure that the cruise terminal is operating at a better, you know, a better capacity, is better suited to the community for the next 30 years. So that's kind of like the framing that we're looking at, but.
Okay, so not 30 years for shore power, but how soon for getting to a place where you've done due diligence again to evaluate the feasibility of shore power and to do it?
Again, I can't give it a defined date or.
Just roughly?
They don't have a timeline.
Like-
That's the thing, they don't have a timeline.
You can't say like 6 months, you can't say 2 years, 5 years, done.
At this point
Okay.
now.
Alright, and with the workshop, what was the turnout like? The one in January?
We had around 25 people,
Who was invited?
it was publicly shared, so we had flyers around the community, lots on our social websites. I believe it got sent out to a list of different organizations, the community board, that were on our list. You know, we know that there definitely can be a lot more turnout, and so we're hoping at our next workshops, we can get more, and then you know, I also know we're hosting these workshops at the cruise terminal. It is the dead of winter, so we don't always have the highest turnout. So I think this survey, at least right now, is where we're trying to capture feedback that probably wasn't captured at the workshop. But we definitely want to see more and more people come.
Did we get invited to the last one?
It was public, but I went, and Matt, to your point, I asked them as a courtesy, maybe they should have told community, at least presented it to community board four.
Yeah.
Something
I remember
No,
seeing some,
meaning the planning, what they were doing. Yeah, she sent out like.
She sent out a notification that this workshop was happening.
Yeah, or it was on the public.
There wasn't a lot of notice.
No, because somehow I've missed it altogether and I wouldn't have, I mean,
But I mean,
I've
they're-
done this kind of project. before.
Yeah, we requested they come to, we requested they do the master plan part of it to this committee, hopefully in January.
to do a workshop, a standalone workshop for the committee?
Kind of a workshop, but also explaining what they,
Yeah.
there was also a preview of like an explanation of what
Oh,
they
what
were
they were
doing, the designer, and he was.
Yeah, it would be great if there were any like takeaways from that, like, yeah, exactly, like what the outcomes were, what they did. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'd like to attend the next one. If I
would
can,
like
are
to
they,
go.
is there a hybrid option? Are they recorded?
And no, it's only in person, and it isn't recorded more just because we have, you know, breakup sessions, so it's a little challenging logistically too, but, you know, we're documenting all of this, and so that will be part of the readout that happens in transition.
Okay, and then with the community fund, when does that start?
The date, sorry, go ahead.
Was Q2, right?
Yeah, so Q2 is when, the funds will be technically available for distribution, the fund in terms
This
of.
year,
Yeah.
2025?
Yeah, so, but it's not like a lose it or, you know, it's not like
Right.
that will be lost, like it will
Right.
accumulate, so. Those funds will be, you know, collected from the cruise funds, and starting Q2 and will be. Repeated quarterly, I believe, I also have your help on there, but it should be quarterly, and then, yeah, and so. That will be for 2025, but we'll also have some retroactive funds for 2024 for one of the cruise lines.
And you're still working out the process for prioritizing ideas, 'cause I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of them, and I'm just,
And like administration, office of the funds.
and what do those include right now in terms of ideas for prioritizing
I
funds?
think
and-
this, I mean, would love to, yeah, the air filtration for the good suggestion.
Oh, no, not just like
Oh.
recommendations, but like
Yeah.
the actual like next, like, are you gonna have like a community advisory board? Are you gonna take
That's, I think,
requests for
the
proposals
whole
from different,
administration process is kind of.
you're discussing currently? Okay, yeah, it would be great to include, I mean, certainly members from the community board, but also folks from NYCHA, from Harbor View Terrace. There's other local stakeholders that, you know, aren't as engaged as they might be, but.
Something about that power, it would be useful if they.
Well, something about community needs and, you know, how that money should be spent locally. So, yeah, like a community advisory board might be one way to do that.
I just want to follow up question, Tara. When you came last, or the original presentation said you guys were gonna collect funds starting the beginning of 2024.
Yeah.
Were funds not collected, or they were being collected, they're just somewhere in a store, or?
So originally, when we came, the mechanism to collect those funds would have been through the long-term agreement. So originally, it was supposed to be.
Which wasn't executed.
Well, so originally it was supposed to be with Norwegian, MSC, and Carnival. We do have a signed agreement for Norwegian, so we will have the funds for Norwegian from 2024. We don't for Carnival and MSC. So there are some.
And they're sitting with your agency.
No, not at this time. Like, that will be collected from Norwegian, I wanna say in Q1, so that they will be available for Q2.
So then the process that you're talking about would be required.
Yeah, you would want to start that. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes time to get that. You gotta get people not put on. Yeah, it's quite a bit of work.
Next person.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you.
So just to piggyback on what Leslie was saying about Pier 92, to add insult to injury, all of the fines that Vornado was levied for their neglect of Pier 92 were just wiped away. They were allowed to basically get an amazing deal on waterfront property to build something. And suddenly now they're able to build very expeditiously when they let everything just fall apart for 15 years. I do know, I think it was in one of your studies, you mentioned that Pier 90 is shifting or moving or sinking or doing something.
Yeah.
Does EDC have a management plan for how often they are checking on their piers? Why was that not figured out sooner?
So as part of the Pier 90 extension process, part of that required a subsidence study, so that looks at what is the condition of the piers and whether it's sinking or not, and so that's the part that's still in process. So right now, we're waiting to hear back from that, or just, you know, and so that is kind of the checking process, but that will also, you know, inform what we're talking about when we're talking about these infrastructure investments as well. So if more investment has to happen into it, that will be incorporated.
Yeah, so the only reason that was found out was because you did a study for the extension, but EDC does not have a plan to regularly monitor or check the condition of the piers.
Allison, do you know?
Yeah, sure. Hi, folks. I'm Allison Dees. I'm a VP here at EDC and newly head of the cruise department. I think the cruise group has historically been like maybe one staff member, and we're staffing up. We'll have a team of 4, and I'm leading that group. And before I was on the cruise beat at EDC, I was on EV charging for 2 years. So I know that historically there's been a lot of turnover at EDC, and I think that's contributed to some of these issues. I do not see myself leaving until we have made really significant progress on shore power, and that's a lot of the reason that I'm in this role today. So I think, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I tested positive for strep earlier today, and I did not want to share that. So I'm sorry I'm remote. I wish I could be, but I think we'll be coming back to you all pretty frequently, and I'll be in person for those. I think the question that was just asked, to make sure I understood correctly, was about what are we doing for like regular kind of monitoring of the piers. There's sort of 2 issues with the piers. I don't want to spend too long, but I think maybe this is helpful. It's something that I've kind of learned more about recently. So one is the pile infrastructure. I think, as you all know, these are wooden piles. As the water has actually gotten a lot cleaner, marine borers and things have made more, they eat away at the piles more. And so the piles need more kind of concrete and encasement around them to protect them. So that is something that EDC does on a very regular basis. It's sort of like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Like we finish one pile, we're doing another one. There's really never a moment in time over the last 15 years where there's not kind of continuous pile work happening. So that's one issue. But the other thing that is really that I think we learned a lot about from the report on Pier 92 is subsidence, and that's the biggest thing that has changed here, is that as water has been kind of sucked out of the aquifers, a lot of the East Coast is experiencing settling and subsidence issues. And so before, and that's not something that rehabbing the piles can solve for. The only thing that really solves that is our new concrete piles that go into bedrock. And so those are a lot of the issues that we actually saw at 92 is a combination of the timber piles not being maintained, it sounds like, as you're referring to, but also the underlying subsidence issues and those piles actually sinking and the structure becoming unstable. So Pier 90 we have noticed sinking. We're not seeing that in 88 in the same way, but we have seen that at 90. And so that is really, we needed to pause, as Tara alluded to, and kind of looking at, okay, so we have the shore power study that says that things are feasible. We have this issue now with Pier 90 subsiding. We do have a plan to maintain the piles and we have the funding for that. But then the two other issues are knowing that the pier really doesn't satisfy the needs of the stakeholders. It's a really old pier that is by no means really serving the community in any capacity, without any public space, with a crammed walkway. I mean, all the things that you know. I myself bike regularly along there. It's awful. And it's not serving the needs of the cruise lines anymore. It's really towards the end of its useful life. And so the combination of all of those things it has really gotten us to this particular moment. But again, to answer your question about like, are there regular programs in place for monitoring the actual pier pile structure? There definitely is.
Okay, and then my second question, comment was about the community fund. Totally understand how important workforce development is. We have a lot of programs for workforce development. I know our council member created a whole workforce development thing. Hudson Guild has. While Hell's Kitchen does have a long history of longshoremen and dock workers, those people don't exist here. We are theater and actor people, creatives in the arts. So workforce development doesn't necessarily serve our community as much as things like giving money to Hudson River Park to add more green space and build stuff out. Helping us pay for PEP officers in our local parks that are have security issues, things that actually benefit the full community and not a small segment that realistically workforce development would only serve a very small portion of the people who live here. So it's a great goal, but for this purpose, if the purpose is supposed to be giving back to the surrounding community, workforce development is not necessarily the way to do that.
And we have a list of district needs.
Well, you also have the Harbor School, which exists.
The Harbor School is in Governor's Island.
Well, yes, but it's not just on Governor's Island. I mean, it's students are not from Governor's Island, obviously. They're from mostly disadvantaged neighborhoods in Brooklyn, but not all of them. But there's that, and then there are the individual tug companies which run some of their own training programs and kind of thing. So it's not like it doesn't exist here. And then there's SUNY Maritime. There are a lot of places that train people.
We can't turn this into a discussion of how we're going to spend the funds. That's another discussion. But that discussion needs to happen, and your suggestion was a good one. You finished?
Yep. Not to go back from this, because Marty did indicate that it wasn't appropriate time to discuss usage of funds, but we did talk about mitigation specifically, and one of the issues that we have with the cruise terminal is like both pedestrian and taxi cab, topic, and so I would just highlight that as well. So I was curious, you were speaking about the challenges with building out, the infrastructure for the piers. Is it physically possible with these very narrow piers to actually build out the infrastructure? Like, is there a chance, you know, 3 years from now, feasibility is just like, oh, well, actually, we can't do it here.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
And I think to exactly that point, that's why the feasibility study on its own for shore power wasn't enough to actually give us a full understanding of how we build out shore power, which is why this master planning effort is really what we need, because to exactly what you're saying, we need to not just be thinking about like building out an electric connection, it is all these other parts, so yes, you're right.
But that means that in theory, and I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot, but in theory, the ultimate end plan could be, this is simply not a possibility on the west side of Manhattan, because the sort of build of the piers. And I'm not saying that will happen, I'm just saying that is, it sounds like that's actually a possibility.
I think because we're very committed to shore power, we don't see there, and also because of just where the cruise industry is going, like we don't see a future for cruise in this area, there's shore power isn't a part of it, so.
Correct.
I mean, yes, there's, of course, we're at the early stages and this master plan could come in different areas, but we're not going into this thinking that there's a world in which we're not doing that. I think we are very much seeing that as a key piece of this, we want to make it happen, it's just the how, that's the question.
I 1000% agree. They could not have shore power here would be completely out of step with the industry, and it's not a question of it happening or not. It's how and when.
At a point of clarification regarding Pier 92, was there ever a legally binding contract with Barnoto where if they were to equip that pier state, that we can now legally take action to claim that funds back and have the
Yeah, that I'm not prepared to answer right now, but we can certainly circle back with you.
They waived it.
EDC like this, so there was a legal contract
They waived
binding them.
They totally paid it and waived it. We brought it up for 15 years.
Yeah, hey Allison, Brad here from the board. I'm glad to hear that shore power is a priority and what happened. And I understand we're doing a study. But all over the country and the world, they have temp trailers that bring in the shore power. So we need to talk temp solutions while we're looking at this overall bigger strategy, because we're getting polluted on. Our dollar, to me, what we already discussed on this board that we fought for, was because we're the most polluted area. And this dollar was going to go to parks and environmental things, not a job. So if you want to get money for the jobs, charge them another dollar. It's got nothing to do with us. That was the deal. I think we need a temp solution, not a 30-year and a 5-year study. That can be done in a year. With a trailer, kind of give me the power, and hook it up. I also didn't want to confirm, are they shutting down the actual cruise ship and running on their generator? On their generators? We want to make sure of that. We've already talked about the traffic solution, but we've been asking and asking. We're putting 4,000 people onto the West Side Highway, just dump there. We bring it up every meeting. We bring it up to our council member. These poor people are getting off the terminal and walking on a 6-lane highway. There's no flagman, there's no pickup. It's a disaster. We've asked you repeatedly to get some people out there, an internal pickup plan. There's nothing. I can't wait till you can go to your hotel. I mean, it's a problem. It's a disaster. And we've been asking and asking. What I'm asking is, who is the leadership? So I just heard Allison, because that was my first question. We need change of leadership. This is a joke. So, I mean, I think she just said she just got taken over. I appreciate that. But it's, I don't know who's in charge. It's shocking. Absolutely shocking. I think the good things that I'm hearing from you, Tara and Allison, is, yes, it does need an overall. It's like we're building horse stables. And we're in the drone world now, you know what I mean? So 100 years ago, I keep bringing this up, we're preparing for cars and, we need to be preparing for the next revolution, which is drones. And drone taxis. Pier 90 should be an absolute transportation pier. And it should be sold or leased, and let them pay for the infrastructure, and let Amazon bring everything in there, and let all the air things go in there for our transportation. We have to look much bigger. And I would like you to go to some of the schools here, and we've had presentations on the west side what to do with different piers. Just imagine just 10 students that come with amazing ideas. We want some ideas. You know, look into the future, talk to a lady, they got people, they want it to be great. But we're building with Legos, this is not good.
Related, would you like to take over Pier 92? Build something spectacular. But there, to your point, I'm not interrupting you, to your point. We talked about this and you mentioned this too. We've advocated for Blue Highway now solutions of getting stuff in and maybe Pier 92. And I think EDC actually had that on their master plan checklist.
Yeah, we released our RFI. Yeah, so we released our RFI last year, I want to say, to get more information from the industry about additional sites to Blue Highway. Right now we have 6 sites that have funding for them right now, and we want to, a big part of EDC's mission and focus right now is expanding Blue Highways, moving freight by water and not by trucks. And so we heard a lot of interest about Pier 92 for Blue Highway. And so, yeah, part of the master plan is not just future crews in this, but also how can we be advocating it for other needs and, you know, transportation needs.
I don't want the first 3 points that Brad made to get lost, so I'm
I'm
going
gonna go back to it.
let me repeat them. Let me repeat what you said. You said, why can't you, the Pier 88 isn't subsiding, why can't you do a temporary connection on Pier 88? He said, you want to use the $1 for work fare development, fine, charge another one for the community, or the other way around. And he said, the traffic on the west side, when the folks come off the ships is horrendous. It's not just dangerous for them. Last week, a ship came in and I happened to be driving north on the West Side Highway. It was a disaster for everybody.
You're not allowed to say that.
It was a disaster for everybody. The West Side Highway was completely blocked. The folks were struggling to get across the street in a dangerous condition, and taxis were lining up all over the place. So
Allison, we need temp solutions now while you're studying this. It's not acceptable. I'd rather you take the 900 grand and get us some temp shortfall. I mean, I just did a search, took me 2 minutes. There's 5 companies that are doing it. It's not hard. Literally, they obviously need powerful content, that's all it says, we need that source. It's ridiculous for us to come here, and we were promised something to the community, and it's not happening. It's just like, it is life or death, it is pollution.
Yeah.
So it's a little different than building a condo or not, it's different. I also wanna say, a pier at the tow pound, Hudson River Park Trust came to us and said, hey, in order to max out parkland to the other 50% that has to bring in revenue. Can we think about reconfiguring the piers? And we said yes, and it's the same thing here. And if you're looking at the program, look at reconfiguration, look at pulling it out farther. We are open. We can't get stuck in something that was built in 1930, right? We can change it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's.
And look at the technology that was used to build Little Island. Right? We have the technology, not to hurt the environment, get the piers in, we can't, we're stuck.
I think that's why we should have a master plan, like what we're saying.
Totally, and definitely, we definitely will get more into all those details, because everything you're saying is a big part of this, for sure.
Don't lose the temp fix though.
We're just gonna focus on temp fix, really, I mean, we have to have it.
Yeah.
For you guys to sit here and say, it's not feasible right now, we don't have to wait, it's a trailer.
Anybody else?
Well, first, yeah, I mean, we have,
You've spoken, we'll go to him and then to you.
No, hold on, Carlos is from Eric's office, so, okay.
What's up, Bonnie? How are you? Hi, everyone.
Stand up, Carl.
Oh,
Go
sure.
ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Nikita.
Hi, Tara. It's nice to see you in person.
Yeah.
That's a lot on the Zooms there, but, you know, Brad kind of touched on the point that I wanted to emphasize. And when we hear things like comprehensive study, you know, master plans, those usually, we're used to that meaning
Holistic.
delay. So we have like, there's a reflexive, like, I think, pull back at that, and it's frustrating for the community here. This, you know, shore power here is, the longer it's delayed, there is a real human cost to this. I mean, you know, there's parts of, and I live right around there, you know, there's parts of the place where you can do like this and see some of the exhaust. So, you know, we have to figure something out. And I think there is, you know, we want EDC to think really creatively about how we can solve this and bring shore power with haste to this part of the community. And for the dollar fund, you know, I think we agree with some of the sentiment we've heard here that workforce training, very nice. You know, maybe there's a place for that, but there needs to be, the community fund really needs to honor the community piece of a community fund. So I hope we can all continue to work together. I think we're all gonna be in touch. It's really nice. And hi, Allison, nice to see you on there. We look forward to working with you all, but you know, this is a priority for this community, and I hope you're hearing that. And we can continue to work in haste to bring shore power to this part. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, good statement.
Eric.
Go ahead.
Carl.
Yeah, hi, thank you guys for coming. My name is David Stewart. I'm a president of the Block Association in Hell's Kitchen, and we are 45th Street, so we are right across. We go right down the street to the Intrepid. You go out to that pier, to the end of it, and there are so many issues in Hell's Kitchen right now. There are so many. One of the issues I keep hearing more and more from the community is this specific issue. And I gotta tell you, I don't understand where the outrage is. Cause I am absolutely outraged. I can't even tell you, not at you guys, but what he was saying about leadership, like studying, come on. Like, this is a problem. It's like, get to it and let's solve it. And by the way, I'm a community leader. If you ask anybody in this neighborhood about my block association, they will tell you who I am. I don't think you can go anywhere in Hell's Kitchen that they don't know our block association. I had never heard of these meetings. So outreach to the community, I keep saying this to Parks Department, I say it to so many city agencies. The community in Hell's Kitchen is smart. We can be a force multiplier. Nobody uses the community. So I'm not upset at you guys, so don't mistake the fact that I'm being passionate and upset right now at you guys. I understand the challenges of being short-staffed. But whoever is in leadership there has got to get their shit together and get it moving. So I'm sorry to use that language here, but this is the language I'm hearing from people. They go out to that pier and this yellow and green and black smoke and brown smoke comes over and chokes them out. This shouldn't be a 1-year thing or a 6-month thing. This should be a 2-week thing. Next month, if this was me, I would be saying next month, come to us with a plan. That should be the goal. Like a timeline that is absolutely like, okay, great, like not having a timeline. I honestly don't know how you guys come to a meeting and don't have a timeline. So that said, I would like to see way more community outreach. I will come to those meetings. I know a lot of people in the community would. So that has to be improved, and like a timeline next meeting. I don't understand why that couldn't happen. So is there something in the way, getting in the way of that happening? If there is, how do we fix that?
Go, Carl.
I was just gonna offer that I'm happy to work with EDC to make sure that we have the relevant community stakeholders at the next meeting, and we can, I'm happy to work together with you on that to make sure everybody's invited to every included.
Sorry, you didn't hear him coughing before he came up? What was that?
Coughing. Anyone else? No. Okay, I think, thank you. I mean, I think we'll have, someone will make a motion for a letter, I'm guessing. And I will write it.
Well, in that case, I make the motion. And second it.
Would anyone second that? And we can vote.
Me?
Thank you, Roberta. And just so you guys, I think I said this, I don't know if I did, but just to update you guys, I've been really talking with Linda's office and Brad's office throughout about this new development. And I think you guys too, maybe, where they are crafting a letter to the EDC as well, and there might be some sort of, hopefully, maybe they can do some sort of legislation. If it's gonna be longer, later rather than sooner, but anyway, we can talk about that next time. And Tara, can we be in touch about January meeting, about the workshopping part of it, is that okay? And we can.
Listen, I just have a
Go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
So Hudson River Park Trust is state, right? Is this area gonna be taken over by the state?
This is city.
No, I'm saying, could it be taken over by the state?
It's long term.
I'm just wondering, if can we get federal funds or, you know, some other way of doing this, we're just spending, was it, the gate was $29 billion? We're going right through over there. Shock.
I mean, I think we talked about, which was also a little disappointing, that you guys, when we talked about grants for it, right? You applied for some federal grants and then got, and got denied on all those avenues, I think, right?
We did. I do think with the deliverables that we'll get from the master plan and having more of that, we will have a stronger case and we will be applying every year at every opportunity. So figuring out the funding from both a grants federal perspective, private sources from the cruise lines, is part of of what we're looking into with this master plan.
I hope the next time we speak, you will at least talk to us about how soon you can put in a temporary fix for short power.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, don't you know Win? And they're friends with the new administration? Maybe, Win is a big Trump, anyway. Say maybe we can get some,
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make sure that we just thank you guys for coming in person and presenting. I know that the news is bad, but hope that that is integrated in the letter, like we do.
In other words, we're still friends?
I expect you guys to come in person.
Like the expression is, I think in disappointment, but I did also.
Thank you, that's a sentiment I think we share.
Thank you.
I don't like Tara at all. So
He doesn't like it that I have.
Oh, like that.
Sorry. Thanks. Tom.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, so let's,
Open up the next
Oh,
part of the meeting. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, she's not too, it doesn't make it really. Janine,
Yes, I'm here.
is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this particular issue?
No, there's no hands.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry?
The letter.
I thought there was, and there was a second.
And there was.
There's a second.
But there's no vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think we're gonna talk about what was in the letter after,
Okay.
like, yeah. So, but now we're going to go to, our community discussion or letter writing or whatever it is, but since it's a little unusual, we're not going to write a letter on the, what Related's presentation was. It's, all our comments are gonna be fed into the master, big, huge letter that, land use is gonna do. But Paul, you know what, since you're here, thank you for waiting and coming. But I think Paul's just gonna give us a little bit of, an idea of what happened last night, what the community, the committee voted out and why. And who was who was there, just give them a little, something.
I'm glad that really is, so it still some yelling and screaming, it did not go on at you last night, so I'm very happy that you got to see that other committees treat other people differently. So I noticed a couple bits of the conversation, there's some sort of confusion over exactly what we're doing and what this is all involved, so I'm gonna take just a minute to go back through sort of 2009 plan. So in 2009, there was a redevelopment plan for the eastern and western rail yards, rezoning was taking place, composition of space predominantly commercial on the eastern side, predominantly residential on the western side. So it would be an integrated kind of mixed use neighborhood. Over the years, the predominantly commercial side of the eastern got developed. The western side, that is predominantly residential, a lot of different factors have come into play over the last 15 years, such that Related is saying to us that it's not economically feasible to build that platform and those housing units that were part of that original plan. The zoning in 2009 has a site plan attached to it. So the building configurations and positioning is all part of that zoning. What they're asking for is to change that piece of the zoning. So the underlying zoning of the C64 is staying the same. They're looking to consolidate all of that. So they're doing that so they can have more commercial, so they can have the financing to build the platform and the rest of the development. The committee, Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, is saying if that commitment to residential, so I want to say one more thing about the 2009, 1,100 affordable units, many of them are off-site. We often talk about those sites without knowing they're actually the related off-site, MTA site, DEP site, those are all part of that 2009 plan for housing. So that's where the 1,100 affordable units and the remaining 324 that are still committed to on the Western Rail Yards, that's part of a grander scheme neighborhood-wide. But the thing that we really touched upon is that we have an opportunity here in 3 city blocks that are undeveloped. And if there's a problem with financing and there's other ways of financing development, let's look into those options. Okay. The one thing that has changed is the cost structure and the technical aspects of the platform. But the one thing that is consistent is that we need more housing, period. Whether it's affordable, luxury, market rate, like that formula, we can take a look at and examine. We could also change some of the configuration of some commercial, increase some commercial, add commercial, reduce the residential. But to say it's flipping the formula to have predominantly commercial on the Western Rail Yards does not make sense. So one of the other things that came up was that marshland land that David's talking about to the north, state-owned land. The Western Rail Yards is an MTA land. Maybe we go to the state and say, this is an opportunity to restructure the western side of Manhattan into a complex of residential units that with the new cap of FAR residential being lifted from 12 to higher, let's look at 15, 18 FAR residential on this 4 blocks of Midtown Manhattan on the Hudson River, and let's reassess what our plan is overall. So the question is about, we need financing from commercial to help finance the platform, that makes sense. But then to say the casino is going to be the funder of the financing, but the casino isn't guaranteed. So there is no guarantee that this financing plan is actually going to materialize. So they're asking us to change the zoning to allow for more commercial so they get the funding, but they don't have the funding. So what we ended up saying is, this is really odd for us, is to say deny completely this application, ask Related, go back to the drawing board, ask the city and state to get together and come up with a better scheme, better financing to create a more vibrant residential component along the west side, along the Hudson. So there are 2 things we have to do. We have to vote on the ULURP, which is technically the zoning text amendments and the special permits, and that has to be voted through. And Brad, your question about timeline earlier is we're on that clock for 60 days. This has to be voted out of full board by January 6th so that that process will move forward. If they get the ULURP passed, then that will go through that process and get approved, and then they would go in for the casino application afterwards. If this ULURP does not pass, and Eric would have to lead on voting no on this, would mean that the casino could not go forward. So that's how the casino interconnects to all of this scheme. So that's why a lot of conversation is it's the casino, not casino, whatever. Okay, so but also, even though we've taken, and this is really, I'm struggling, I don't know how I'm gonna figure this out. We voted to deny outright. We don't ever do that. We always do deny with conditions or deny with,
Unless.
deny unless. And so we take all the EIS information and say, if you approve this or deny, these mitigations have to happen before this moves forward. So I'm now struggling with how do I include all the language about the draft EIS and the commentary of that into a letter from Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, us, and then full board, that all of our concerns in stormwater treatment and separated sewer and running water lines and all these things, like, how do we make sure that gets incorporated? Because if our letter is just denied, I want to still make sure that we have the opportunity to address the EIS issues that we have in front of.
That's because the borough president and city council could vote differently than the community board.
Of course. And
That's why
so,
we always try to negotiate better than, because we just get run over,
right,
and they don't have to come to us at all.
right.
So
So that, and we,
that's what-
that's what, we almost never do, we've never done this, so it's a weird position.
Did the Chelsea,
House kitchen.
House kitchen land use vote what you just said?
Yes,
Cause I don't know if the Chelsea did the same thing,
Chelsea
We're
land use,
gonna do on Monday?
Chelsea land use.
so we're not gonna weigh in.
The Chelsea land use is not part of this particular application because it is a Hell's Kitchen application for land use. So they'll have the voice heard at full board, but not, it's not a land use for.
I mean, we're asking for housing, right? And I said it, if you want the road, double the affordable housing. Maybe we just ask for more affordable housing within this current package. And look at it that way, instead of, because it's not going, the casinos, they have to choose, right? The state has to pick a side with that mineral board. This is not stopping. We're gonna get run over by a train. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. We could ask them politely, hey, will you commit with this? They've worked with us before. You know, could you go to a much higher level that we feel we accept permanent affordable housing? Double it or add a little bit more to fit this scheme. I don't know. I mean, we're taking a really big risk there.
We are, yeah.
And for us at the Parks Department here, you know, we're concerned about the park and everything else, but.
Yeah, and to address that, there have been conversations about that factor, that we, as I say, we've never just deny anything. And actually, the alternative plan, if you look at the draft EIS, they have to propose an alternative to development. And the alternative is, instead of the one tower on the podium of the casino, it's 3 towers, and one of them is a residential tower that has 300 units in it. This is actually the first I've heard of the residential units, top of the hotel, so I won't follow on that one, but, you know, that is something to think about. But if they didn't describe how the funding would happen for that tower of residential, the alternative plan, there isn't a funding source for that in this proposal. So I think you're right, we want to talk to them about what mix would make sense, and how do we get this, maybe the state and the city involved, and we use the fact that this is an MTA parcel, that the marshalling grounds are just north of it. Let's get the state, let's get ESD in and say, all right, let's revisit this entire complex. So in that case, but to add for just a layer of more affordable housing doesn't help their financing plan. Is that what they're saying?
I don't know about that. You've got a casino that goes there, it's gonna be there, I'm sure it's 50-year lease. Right, it's the whole thing. First you're hearing, as I was hearing, that he's doing the trunk move where he's gonna sell hotels and then rent them out,
Yeah.
right? To get that extra.
Yeah.
So that's something we've never heard of before.
Right. But Brett, we know that we don't know where the 3 casino licenses are going. There
No,
are,
that's
there are
exactly.
11 applications across the region. 3 of them are gonna be granted, 5 are in Manhattan alone, right? So, and I don't envision, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't envision more than 1 license in Manhattan. And so is the license in Manhattan gonna go to UN Plaza? Is it gonna go to Times Square? Is it gonna go here at Hudson Yards? Is it gonna go to Silver Stream property? We don't know where it's going to go.
I know.
Even if we approve this, then the casino application process goes forward. And they may or may not get approved here at Hudson Yards. And so your issue of like, can we ask for more affordable units as a part of the casino
No,
plan?
but we asked them, Leslie asked them, and he said it. We have a backup plan to build the 3 on top of the current, because we were concerned about the base not screwing up the park, right? So they still have an economic plan to do it
But
without the casino.
the question is there financing for the alternative plan to build the platform? Can you build the platform without the casino?
Yes.
Not yet.
No.
No.
No,
No,
Yeah.
but you said that you had a plan for the 3 on top.
They-
If we agree to this.
that would be the
We would've
alternative
said
if they
that.
don't get the casino license, but right now they're banking on the funds that would be generated by the casino and with Wynn to pay for the platform. If they do not have that, they do not have a plan in place for how to pay for the platform, which is $2 billion.
And they have publicly said, if they don't get the approval of this rezoning, they're basically gonna turn the keys in on the site back to MTA. And like Jeff Blau was at the meeting last night and he said, that plan ain't happening. Like,
Yeah.
his boss, like, you know, he said, it ain't happening, right? So that means they're gonna give up.
It's like an
that-
all-in 2009 affordable.
The 2009 plan,
Oh.
the site plan that exists today, if they, Jeff said last night, if they don't get this approval, they ain't doing it.
The whole
How
thing.
much would it cost then? How much would it cost them to, because now we don't have to support a building, support a park on the whole thing then?
$2 billion.
I know. You won't need $2 billion because it's not the same, not the same
You can't
structure.
build a park on the tracks.
Yes, you can, you build it
So-
over.
But what do we need to do, so thanks for being here, Paul. So you wrote a flat out denial, no conditions. We're not doing a letter. What do you need? And it sounds like you're not sure you can, because you've never done
Well, I
it
think
before, but what are we
what
doing
would be
now
helpful for
for
me-
you, this
What would be
letter?
helpful for me
Yeah.
is to continue on the process of commentary on the draft EIS
Okay,
and what issues you would want for either mitigation or for the study.
submitted?
So all the notes I took on your questions and some people that had, sections of it that they went over.
Right.
And also sent in, so that's gonna all go to Paul
Okay, so
and
we've
he's
done that.
going to, yeah.
Oh, was your vote unanimous?
Did you, are you done?
No, I guess, well, I mean, I guess that's helpful to understand. I mean, I guess, when do you want us to start, can we start having this conversation now about other things? Like, the Highline is certainly something that I brought up, and I think it's an important thing to make sure it's
Paul's gonna
integrated,
touch
so.
upon that.
So I just wanna make sure, like, it sounds like they're not even speaking, which isn't good. So
Who's
whatever,
not speaking?
well, they said that Highline's ignored that.
Related has.
Oh, no.
Related has made overtures.
They were there
to us, and they have not agreed to meet recently. I'll bet you $100 because I will go to win when it's built and gamble, that they will reconnect and they'll make things work. There's this, Highline presented last night. And they presented this study that you have in front of you. And basically Related has committed to communicating with Highline and Highline just hasn't been responsive as of the last few months. I fully suspect that that partnership will reconnect and they will continue talking.
But the Highline came for a specific purpose. I mean,
What do they want?
okay. So Highline came and they are very much against it.
Okay.
In fact, they said very vehemently, they had a bunch of people come, the heads of the Highline came. They said, we never say no to building. We have not said no to one building around the Highline ever. This is our very, very first time. And then they had their own study that they did, which is the one
Yeah, the
that you
wind
see,
thing,
yeah. And they presented that as well, but that was there.
So their
That was their
concern is
take
the
on it.
wind tunnel issue?
What?
Their wind tunnel?
I think there was shadows, there was wind, there was a lot of, it seemed like there was a lot of, I don't wanna say animosity.
I would say animosity, I would,
There was
there's some tension going on.
There was something,
Between
yeah.
Highline and Related,
Figured out.
and that's beyond my pay scale, like, they're gonna figure that out.
You're a volunteer, right?
I am. You're gonna tell them I pay for that comment. So, I think that the Highline is pretty clear, they think this will be devastating to the Highline. Related argues that it's not, and they're.
And then they
both sides.
dumped a bunch of petitions on Paul's desk.
Yeah,
So they think that 2009, more buildings, less park, one open space is worse. That's, I just want to make
Well,
sure.
Is that-
no.
2009.
No, they prefer the 2008
Yeah.
that they agreed to.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly. So I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, the vote on our committee was unanimous, by the way, which is, yeah.
This is a little out there, but if we go back to the last image from when we were presenting the Western Yards. That was
Janine, can you hear us?
Janine, are you there?
Janine?
She's also gone to bed,
Yeah.
like everybody else in the folder.
But it showed the property across 33rd Street, and when you look at that big loop that Highline creates, it's just a natural to fill that space. I actually worked on Hudson Yards when it was called Camera West Side Yards in the 1980s.
Oh, my God.
For Byron Linder Bell, I laid out a zillion parking spaces between the deck over the tracks and the park above. And I think it filled that whole width, and it had a very broad park and a bridge over to Hudson River Park. And if you look at where the vessel is relative to the rest, right now it's kind of off center on that big avenue-like park that you created. It's kind of crying out to become like a university quadrangle with a down like library at one end. You know, it's a natural focus, and on the other end, you've got the opening to the river, but it's off center. If you could capture
Which
that
one did you
state
get?
land.
Which one? Which?
It was the last image that was
The
up.
last
It
image?
was like a site plan that included the current Hudson Yards development, including the vessel. And it showed the lot across 33rd Street.
David, I will say generic.
No, it's a plan.
It's a plan.
It's like a plan that shows many of the blocks.
That's the last one.
And
Oh, no. That one.
keep going. No. It kind of had the existing construction shaded out a little bit. It showed the vessel to the right. From above a plan.
While we're waiting for it to come, David, I will say, I think that would support the position that we're taking at Hell's Kitchen Land Use. Is that this plan is not the plan we want to see. Another plan that would incorporate the Marshall Yards to the north and combining it, so it's 4 city blocks of Midtown Manhattan along the Hudson River.
Right there. Right there. Now go back to the
Janine,
plan.
know the one that, yeah.
There, just stop right there. Yeah, you can see how the vessel to the right is off center with the kind of avenue that the park creates. If you shifted the casino all the way up north into that state land, it might create a lot of opportunities for related that, you know, could make this an attractive option for them as well. And the park that I remember that was done back in the 1980s was much broader than what you see right here. But imagine that linear park ended up being on axis with the vessel. I don't love the vessel, but it's there and it's kind of a natural focus. You know, if we were half the man Robert Moses was, we'd make this happen.
And it would get.
And David, yeah, so 2 things on that. Yes, I agree that Northern Light, and today was very clear. That ain't happening, right? Because they don't have control of that. It's not part of the plan. So I think that as an alternative, that may make some sense. But given that we're in a stage with a ULURP and a draft EIS, and that is not one of the alternative plans being studied, I think it would make sense that if we deny this and come back to the table, that might be part of the conversation. I'd also point out, just to your concept, that casino platform that you're seeing there, and Brad, you're seeing that the 3 towers are on that. That was the alternative plan. That building north-south, that David, you pointed out, is a block and a half. It's London Terrace and a half, right? So if you even narrowed that building to just 1 city block as opposed to 1 city block and a half, your visual effect of the vessel would actually make more sense in that as well. Because if you look on that schematic where the street comes out just north of the vessel, that's essentially the city grid line. And so that grid line continued on, and that was another thing that we talked a lot about, is the continuation of the grid. Even though the point is made that these are mega blocks, grid blocks, but from the river over to 7th Avenue is all mega blocks that doesn't have the street grid. And so it doesn't necessarily align, but that was one of the things that's part of the 2009 plan, was to have that city grid reflected there. And the other thing I'll point out to Brad is that the park, and David Stewart raised this, that park that's like Bryant Park and come in from 11th Avenue, the only way you get out of there to the west is that a stairwell at the top corner or a stairwell at the bottom corner. And that there is no connection between the center of that park onto the Highland. There's, I think you're asking about a fence. There's gonna probably be a fence between the Hudson Green Park and the High Line, and there's gonna be 5 feet between it. You don't go from Hudson Green onto the High Line. But separate the corners.
Have we requested to put like a great stairwell down into the park?
That's something that I would think about this community. But
You know what I mean? Like,
So that's
when
what
we
the
were
letter,
talking about it, but I just thought it was the Highline thing. That could be a great grand entrance down or a great grand entrance there.
We can talk about that.
I'm sure they would do it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm just saying that now, as long as Highline pulls us back.
I've just never seen a High Line not
It's,
play in sand. I'm a little
yeah,
shocked.
no, it's not what, it's not.
I'm
what
most
it
part of
is.
the leadership
That's
change
not
there.
what it is, that's not what it is.
I just feel like this is $2 billion to build this platform and I totally hear what you're saying in terms of let's open it up and like create this, you know, sort of like above 59th Street, that like row of apartment residential spaces, but it's like, it's a very complicated build out, like what developer is going to be able to like all come together and say, we're going to, I mean, it's like, they need.
About half a dozen of them
Yeah.
will
Oh,
jump at this list.
yes. Yeah, okay. This is to build a platform.
No, but they'll,
It's not the building of the platform, it's the financing
it's
of the
the
platform.
financing of it. Yeah.
It's the money.
Yeah,
This is,
that's
this
what I'm
is, so
saying.
this
It's
is
like all
kind
of
of,
it,
this is
right?
kind of like our, and I know we're getting a little off, you know, I don't wanna get too much for WPE stuff. But it's kind of like what we said about Pier 92, right? Or Pier 94, listen, if Vornado doesn't wanna do it, if they're not gonna put up their end of the bargain on it, there's gonna be other developers that are gonna want waterfront land waterfront property in Manhattan to develop on and put another RFP out. I'm not saying that's what, you know, this is like that, but it kind of is the same, there would be other ideas, there would be other interest. I think that's what the committee
Yeah,
was
that's,
going.
and it could be even, go back to your related, so let's figure out another financing plan and bring in other partners.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. It wasn't against, like, that was very clear. This is not anti-related. It's not like, it wasn't related specific at all. We've worked very well with related over
We're
many
looking at this as a
projects.
missed opportunity.
for bigger, yeah.
And 3 city blocks.
Publicly owned land.
of
Publicly owned
state-owned land to be developed in a way that enhances this community. Could be a residential knit between Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, right? We could have all residential running along the Hudson River and reconnect these neighborhoods. This is an opportunity, it's an opportunity for something like that.
With commercial, with,
It could be,
it could be mixed.
we could change some of the configuration of the 2009 plan and, you know,
Yeah.
recognizing that, you know, the underneath the piers have to be reconfigured based on experience they've had on the west eastern side. There are other conversations we can have. But to say you're gonna put, depending upon the, you know, you're dependent upon financing for a massive grand scale building that's funded by a casino, but you don't have the casino license. And this is part of it works too. It's like,
Yeah.
so that is what we were struggling.
And I don't wanna get, I mean, this will probably be discussed at full board.
Oh,
That's what I think, all this, I don't wanna get too, but I just thought it was important for Paul to just give a perspective and maybe a, you know, a little bit of a, the landscape of what we talked about last night. But we can just stick to the WPE points that we will then send over to Paul.
So some of that has already been sent. And
Yeah, and I'll write some stuff, I'll like write some.
And
Well, what is the money?
any of you that wanna read a paragraph, or one of the environmental chapters and send him comments, that would be great. So moving on.
Yeah, that's it for you. I mean, if you want, does anyone have any other comments about what we should give to Paul? Other than what we talked about, Roberta?
I guess, like, the conference is like within a denial, but there are some advantages, like environmentally speaking, to the like proposal adding in, including but not limited to like the like configuration or larger green space of the park, potentially for we can discuss whether or not this is a pro or con, but like the reduced parking requirements, there's some evidence to support that, like reducing or doing the opposite, reducing the demand for driving to the facility, things of this nature. Like, should we express those things if ultimately the letter is a denial because that's not really what we
Sure.
want to do.
But two things, there isn't more parkland. It's like,
It's like a different
it's a
configuration.
different configuration, open spaces.
That
I mean, there's
creates
like,
like a
there's a
more
small little, yeah,
Direct or like a broader open.
I shouldn't say parkland, but open space
Open
is the,
space,
is
or
the.
open green space as well as.
Open, yes. And also, when you talk about the cars or the parking, it could be, another plan could have the same reduced.
Yes,
As
and
well,
and
so it
it's just an
doesn't-
example of like, if there are things that are ultimately. That, like, we would want to say that actually these are useful and perhaps even an improvement over the initial site plan because. They like improve this on a largely environmental perspective, or like the inclusion of bird safe glass, which. We understand is like a requirement, but like that is positive and it's something that we would want to see in any plan, things of this nature. How does that fit into like a letter that is ultimately a full denial?
The denial.
That's Paul's.
Creative writing.
Yeah, I would say that's Paul.
Yeah, thanks.
We deny, but it's approved for our issues.
But the other, but and there are some things, like Marty has sent me some notes already, and there are some things on the separation of stormwater runoff versus sewage, and having separate mechanisms for the treatment of that is a newer procedure that we don't have in other places. But you mentioned earlier tonight, there's no pneumatic proceedings for managing
Pneumatic
waste
tubes,
within
right.
the buildings. So there's some positives and negatives to all of it. You know, the notion that there is no study of renewable sustainable energy production on
Right.
site. Right, like
Yeah.
that's something we asked for in the scope and it was not studied.
Yeah.
So there, you know, we can frame it in the sense of this is, again, we can go back to this is an opportunity. Right, and I'm thinking out loud here, I'm sorry.
But or Roberta, we can always say, like, we appreciate that you're
Yeah.
doing this, but that also can be integrated in a new, you know, we appreciate.
There's an opportunity.
There's a way to,
There's an after board meetings and people are gonna go, we're saying no, yet we're saying we like all this. It doesn't.
I don't think that's what it's like.
I don't think that, Brett,
There's an moment that you're looking, I go, you know what, they like a lot of things of this. But
And I get-
they're saying it in the letter.
Wait for this, why don't we, I think we're.
I'm glad that we're having this because I am going after. So, but Brett, I think the way
Figure it out.
Roberta.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to make it a discussion, I just wanted to know if you wanted, like.
Yes, the answer is yes,
both
send me
yes,
everything.
Like on both sides.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to.
Is there
There's a
anything,
lot to chew in that EIS, and anybody who takes any section of it will help him, right?
is there anything we didn't talk about today as far as all the different questions of the environmental or the park or the open space that come to mind that we should, if not, shoot it over to Paul, if we think about it tomorrow, he'll incorporate it. Or he'll try and incorporate what he
Tell them we
can.
want a big plug that plugs into the shifts. Temporarily.
A little teeny pretty wire.
Alright.
So we should move on, folks.
Do we have Parks
Yes.
Department still or no?
No,
No, I'm sorry, Parks is not.
All different parts?
No, he said they told me Paul got sick, sorry. Paul is sick,
But
so,
we have another, we have to finish the letter that you.
yeah, so, well, I think it's gonna be kind of easy, there was already a motion. Anything else that we would miss from, to the EDC letter that we talked about and expect out of our
so
committee,
just what exactly are we commenting?
our disappointment?
Is it disappointment with what? With shore power, with the community fund?
The whole,
with-
everything that they promised, I was going to, I mean, if you have ideas, send them to me.
Is it because you stepped out when I was commenting about the community
Sorry.
fund? Are we talking about what they said, we're gonna make, our priority is workforce development. Are we incorporating any comments to counter that?
I think we should say, if you want workforce development, go ahead, but we want the $1 for our community fund, period.
What we originally agreed upon, or at least we thought we agreed upon or talked about, was the specifically $1 per passenger to go into some sort of
Yeah, okay,
fund
because
for
what
the immediate community.
yes, because what I had said before, that while workforce development is great, we do have a lot of workforce development programs that exist in other capacities, the council member, Hudson Guild, all these other opportunities that, and realistically, there aren't people in our community a large percentage that will benefit directly from that workforce development.
You don't even need to say that.
No, so I think, and Carl's here
Yeah.
too, I think what it's gonna be used for can be determined by what Matt was saying, a
Yeah.
committee or some sort of task force. I think we just want to, highlight that money goes to this community. Whatever that is gonna be, will be determined by the council member, by the task, force, whatever it is.
But I just
I
wanna-
can,
I don't want to number those, I don't want just the council member. It's not like we got, because it was supposed to be 1,000,003, then 1,000,005, then 1,000,007, right? Now it's starting off at 900,000. What I think it should go is to environmental impact on the community, so not for a police officer in the school. This is for parks and green and for the environment, that's kind of why we pushed for this the whole time. So, you know, I'm a little more like, just don't wanna leave it open.
Yeah, and definitely having community input, like
You know, I think
that's
that's what Carl's getting at that.
Yeah, and also, we don't quite understand yet what the legal mechanisms are that are gonna, that this money will qualify for. I think we're hoping to hear from EDC about that in the very near term. But we don't quite know what the restraints are, you know, around this, or and what, you know, how it can be used and not be used. So I would maybe, if I may be so bold, caution the board about identifying a specific use now.
Yep.
And that I would suggest language that speaks to a process that will identify community.
but I think we can also say what we expect.
Sure, I was just cautioning against
So,
specific use.
the reason I'm bringing it up is,
Understood.
we were supposed to get this fund at the discretion of the council members, give it the district. Now EDC came back and said, we want to do job training, right? Now, the next council member could say, you know, it's my discretion. I want to do, summer programs for something else that we, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it can totally change. And I just think we as a board we kind of went after this, we got the money based on environmental issues. So I don't think it hurts to say that. And also, Leslie, they collected the dollar from the other cruise ships, not just Royal Caribbean. They can't just not pay. Just, you know, they just brushed it off, like, oh, well, we only know we get it from this guy. Well, they collected the money, they charged it on the ticket.
That's the cruise ships collected.
That's right, the cruise ships
EDC
collected
doesn't
it.
have it yet.
No, but my point is, the other frames are not paying, and they don't feel like you can't collect it.
But they haven't, they haven't paid you yet.
That's
No.
correct,
No.
yeah, so the dollar per passenger from this year onwards will be collected from every cruise line. We will be collecting Norwegian Cruise Line will, because of the agreement that they signed, will give us $1 per passenger for last year.
24.
Yeah, so from 2024.
But the other brands, they didn't charge?
Starting in January.
So nobody, exactly, so there's no long-term agreements with anybody else. This $1 per person fee, we wanted to make sure that we're getting, so now, starting this year, it's going to be a fee added to every single cruise line.
Well, that's not what I asked.
So they weren't
They
previously
didn't
getting it from
charge,
the
the
other
other,
two.
other cruise ships did not charge.
This is a new fee starting in 2018.
No.
Yes, this is yes.
No, but in 2024, besides the one cruise line that's gonna pay, because you're gonna sign a contract with the future,
There,
the other three did not charge?
yeah, so there were no other agreements signed.
So none of them agreed. at
Only
one
one
point
agreed.
to
Only
pay.
one's agreed to the full agreement, so which is.
Four, that's not the question. They were all gonna sign a deal, then obviously they looked at the terminal and said, you guys gotta revamp this. It's not working for us. Clearly, that's how it started.
Not quite,
Well-
but
Well, it's pretty much the timing of it, right? You were trying to sign a deal, like, we're not signing a deal, but should we do the pier? That's why we're in this reevaluation phase. But did they not commit to the dollar, all the other ones?
so in the agreements, a lot of commitments, the first thing stays with, fees for the cruise line is a lot in an agreement. One part of that agreement would have been $1 per passenger fund. So we have only gone forward with one of those agreements with one cruise line. The other.
They used the cruise terminal all of 2024.
So the way that it works is, it's kind of like, for every year, Ports America, our operator, will say, you know, this year we have, you know, the calendar's open. I mean, it's not just a year before, but let's say for 2027, the year's open, cruise lines will then book what dates they want. That is for any line, you don't have to need an agreement for that. What the cruise agreements we're gonna do was give guaranteed berthing space. So essentially, maybe I'm making this up, but let's say Jackie has a cruise line, she's gonna get guaranteed berthing space 1 day every week at Pier 88, berth 1. So that is offline for her specific dates, and then everything else is barricade.
Yeah, but are they paying $1? That's not part of the other cruise line.
The dollar per passenger fee is now in place, will be in place 2025 on, so for 2025, that's a new thing. That we're doing for all the cruise lines regardless of agreement, you know.
So just to repeat what you said, so everybody hears it,
Yeah,
only one cruise line paid $1 last year, none other did.
So what Brad was asking was, did Carnival and WSC collect $1 without you knowing?
I mean, they have their own structure for, I guess. you know,
Well, it was in their agreement, so I would assume they
But
could
they didn't
charge.
sign the agreement.
Wasn't in
But
there.
even if they didn't sign it, they still have to pay. They're using, it's a negotiation.
That starts in 2025.
Yeah.
Now, every single cruise line will have to do that, and that starts quickly.
So let's move forward.
Yeah, well, it'll be in the letter.
So we have to vote on the letter. We didn't. I presume it's unanimous that we are supporting the letter.
Let's
Does
take a
anybody
vote.
disagree or object or abstain?
What was your hands?
I just wanna make sure that you include the temporary solution.
Assuming that
Yes,
one.
yes,
That temporary will be in, yeah.
temporary solution.
Disagreements, abstentions, present not eligible. I take that as a unanimous vote.
Great. Okay.
And I also take that.
A motion to adjourn? Wait, hold on, what?
Can I just bring up one issue that was skipped? So Parks Department didn't show up, the
Yeah, Paul was-
woman from EDC showed up, she had strep throat. I get people get sick, but right now there are issues with Matthew Palmer and McCaffrey Park. Parks Department has a responsibility to come here and give updates. There's like things like, what's going on with the basketball court repair? What's going on with the extremely severe issues going on at McCaffrey? And they don't come, so what that means is now an entire month goes by and we don't know if there's been a single call or a single thing done to address these problems. And now that problem is pushed out another month if they show up. I'm sorry, my outrage is just absolutely.
I will answer because normally I'm in your shoes, right? I will say, he must have got sick at the last minute because Steve Simon, the commissioner, usually comes if he's not here. So something is weird, it's not a normal practice.
My point is,
I think
I think that
he's a human being, totally agree, things happen, but
it must have
is he
happened.
going to send
Yeah.
an email in 3 days with this update, and is it gonna happen?
I think there are with McCaffrey, with Matthew Palmer, there are longstanding issues that.
Yeah, I know, and communication issues with the community, they're just like really unacceptable, and it just seems to be this is.
Yeah.
It's not contagious, it's epidemic across these city agencies, and it's, I don't know how we're.
I'll
we
put you
shouldn't
on
be
an email.
accepting
I'll send Steve Simon, Chief of Staff, an email tomorrow. We'll talk. I'll put you on.
I'm happy to draft the email for you.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion, second.
Second. Thank you, Janine.
I'm getting like,